Hello, hello, everyone. We're going to get started here in about 1 minute. I will see you all in about 1 minute. Hey, 4L. Welcome to the stream.
What you think that you think that you think that we think is cool. You think that you think that you think that
But it's clear that it must begin.
Hello, hello, everyone. How are we doing? I hope everyone is having a great day. Hey, Frozen Fusion. How are you? Good morning. Oh, it's morning where you're at. That's cool. It's always interesting to me how many people join from all over the world. That's so cool to me. But it does make it hard to find a good time that works for everyone. That's literally impossible. But I'm glad it worked for you to be here today, Frozen, and also you, 4L, and everybody else who's tuning in. Yeah, so welcome everybody. Today we are going to get back to our Laravel series. I was gone last week. There was no stream last week. I was at a conference. So yeah, I was in another state. I was at a conference for a few days. So yep, was very much out of town, but conferences are great if you ever get the chance to go. Not necessarily even for the content, right? You know, conferences, obviously they're there for the content, right? You go for lectures or for talks or whatever, but it's also for you to be able to network with other people in your field or who share a similar interest to you, right? So a big part of that, and you know, if you ever do go to a conference, one of the things you should always do is you should always take the chance to network with other folks who are not, you know, from your same organization, right? Outside your friend group, outside your coworker group. Make sure that you take that opportunity to just go talk to people, right? Thank the presenters after, you know, after they do a good presentation. At meal times, go and sit with, you know, people you don't know, right? I mean, obviously, you know, invite your coworkers too, but go sit with people you don't know. Have a meal with somebody new. You never know who you might meet. You know, at the conference I was just at, the very first presentation I went to was really awesome. I loved it. And afterwards, I went up and I thanked the presenter. I said, wow, you did an amazing job. Loved your content. And then afterwards, she and I just started eating meals together. You know, we just started sitting together at lunch and talking. And yeah, I liked her a lot. So absolutely. And oh, Peak, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. They say Peak says meeting devs at a con, or I assume conference, is how I got my current job. Absolutely. Yeah. And also to that, you know, to that regard, it doesn't even have to be like a serious conference either. Man, it could be like a friggin' anime con or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? The point is that that's networking. Is that if you're in a space with people who share similar interests, could be a serious dev conference, could be, you know, a sci-fi convention, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're talking to people, you're making connections, you're making friends, which turn into potential, you know, business opportunities down the line. So yeah, that's how it works. That's what these conferences are really for. You know, the conference that I went to was really specific to my field. You know, I work in data engineering in the higher education space, which is really specific, right? Data engineering and higher education, those two together, because data in higher education is really specific. It's a very specific type of data. It's handled in specific ways. And so there's a specific conference for that. And so it was just a bunch of us higher education data professionals just hanging out for 4 days, for however long it was. And yeah, it was really nice. Even just to be in a space where other people understand what it is I do. Like, don't discount that either. If you're a developer and maybe, you know, your family doesn't really understand coding or programming or whatever it is that you do, or your framework or your niche, that can be kind of draining after a while, right? Nobody understands the work you put in, nobody understands what you do, and then you go to a conference and suddenly, you know, you're surrounded by people who do understand. And that shouldn't be discounted either. So there's a lot of benefits to going to conferences. They can be expensive, definitely. If your employer can pay for you to go to a conference, that's the best. My employer paid for me to go to this one, paid for my hotel and everything, so awesome. But if you're on your own, you can also sign up to be a volunteer. You can help set up booths. You can, you know, help sign people in, that kind of thing. And that will usually get you, a general admission to the conference as well. So you can always go that route if it's going to be too expensive for you to attend a conference. Consider volunteering, and then you might get a discount or a free pass that way. So that's an option for you as well. But yeah, highly recommend conferences. Great way to do it. But yeah, we're back now. We're back. We're online. We're here. And we are resuming our Laravel series. Also, too, just my usual stuff I say at the beginning of each stream. If you want or need closed captioning or subtitles for this stream, I have live subtitles enabled. Fortunately, they are working again. The service that I used was down last week, or 2 weeks ago, but fortunately it's back up, so we have subtitles again. If you want or need subtitles, you should be able to hover your mouse over the right side of your screen over here. You should see a little closed caption icon pop up in purple. You should click that, and then you'll have live generated captions. Yeah, so that's for you there. And yeah, we're resuming our Laravel series. One more thing to update you all on. So the reason I started doing this series, right, was because I was interviewing for an internal position at my current job. And this current position was going to be, hey, Catch good to see you. Thank you. That's very sweet of you. Good to see you. But yeah, so the reason I started this series is because I was interviewing for an internal position at my current job, which would involve developing for Laravel and PHP in general for high performance computing systems. And so, yeah, I had an interview for that. That's kind of what I was prepping for a couple of weeks ago. Had an interview for that. Had a second interview. So I had like a series of 3 interviews. Went through all 3 rounds. I did make it to be a finalist for this role, even though I hadn't ever touched Laravel before. Before like a month ago, right? Whatever, however long it's been. Never touched Laravel before. Made it to the final to be a final candidate. They did decide to go with somebody else who had more experience with Laravel. But I think that just shows the power of interviewing well and doing this prep work, right? Being able to prepare, doing this prep work, having good interview skills, right? I did not, necessarily fit the profile, the specific skills they were looking for. And but still, even with the interview skills that I had, the good soft interview skills and the skills I picked up from, doing a few lessons of 30 Days to Laravel, that got me to the final round. So even though I didn't get selected, I think that does show the power of this type of approach and learning how to interview well. um learning how to interview well in general is a skill that so many people overlook, right? Knowing how to answer those basic questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Why are you interested in this role? Tell me about a time when you have maybe come into conflict with a coworker. Tell me about a time when you had to lead a project. Those types of basic questions will make or break you in an interview. And in the rejection, so they sent me a lovely personalized rejection email. It wasn't, a boilerplate thing at all. And they talked about how much they really liked me as a candidate. They were like, honestly, like, we loved you. We just went with somebody who had experience in both Laravel and high performance computing, which I don't have either of those things. And that's really what this role would be about. So, again, they really liked me, and they said, we would love to consider you for future roles in this space if you're interested. And I said, absolutely. So that's the power. That's a connection, right? That's a connection that I have now with those people. I'm on their list. I'm on their short list. So that's something that could come up in the future potentially. So, just learn how to interview well. And if you don't know, if interviews make you really nervous, which that's fine. You're allowed to be nervous. That's okay. Practice, just like with anything, right? And you're going to get better at interviewing if you practice. And so there's lots of different ways that you can practice. You can practice with a friend in person, sitting across from a table, pretending to be an interviewer. You can practice with a friend. You can practice with ChatGPT. You can use LLMs. Like, one of the things I would recommend using an LLM for is, if you don't have a friend, train, make a chatbot be your interviewer. Just say, hey, chatbot, you are now somebody interviewing me for a job. Ask me questions, and try to respond to the chatbot, preferably using the voice mode, and do a practice interview that way. And you can tailor the chatbot to say, hey, you're interviewing me for a software dev position. You're interviewing me for project manager position. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Just, do it that way. And then finally, I would say probably the least good option, but an option that I have used is practice interviewing in front of a mirror. Just literally stand in front of a mirror, have the questions, ask the question to yourself, and then answer the question to the mirror. And that will kind of allow you to see your own responses and gauge how confident you are with those responses. And I use that, actually use that method to prep for the job that I have now. This was before ChatGPT and all those other options. And it was just basically like me standing in front of a mirror, holding a piece of paper with questions on it and reading questions at myself into the mirror. So, hey, those are your options too. But yeah, highly recommend just get good at interviewing in general. And then that means you'll be generally prepared for whatever interview you stumble into. So like, because for this process that I just went through, I had basically less than a week of notice for all 3 rounds. Like I had 3 rounds of interviews. I had less than a week of notice. I had to absolutely, hustle my butt off for this. So you never know when those types of opportunities are going to come up. And all things considered, I think I did really well. So that just shows how, I felt like I was generally prepared, and then I just had to learn some specific skills, and that got me pretty darn far. I think I was one of like 3 finalists for the role or something like that. So pretty darn good, I would say. But yeah, so just want to kind of share that experience and give you guys an update because, that's the reason why we had started learning Laravel. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop. We've started something here, and the best thing you can do when you start something is finish it. So we're going to go through, even though, I'm not in contention for this position anymore. Will still be good for me and for you all that we go ahead and finish this process. So we're going to pick back up essentially where we left off like 3 weeks ago, I think. We're going to keep going through the lessons kind of as written here. We kind of skipped forward a little bit a couple weeks ago to go to the final project just so I could have some more hands-on experience to be ready for the interview. But we are going to go back to kind of going through the lessons as written. We're going to slow it down a little bit. And yeah, just keep covering the content. But yes, thank you, Oakleus and Rescoder. That's very kind of you. Yeah, the vibe of, how you present yourself, right, in front of a camera or in an interview is also something that can be learned. In my personal life, I am a very quiet person. I'm a very reserved person. I don't talk a lot. And that's by choice. That's just how I am. But, here I get on camera, I get into an interview, and I am just, I'm talking for 3 or 4 hours, right? And so it's something that you can learn and you can train yourself on no matter what your natural inclination is. So just keep that in mind. Nobody's personality is set in stone. All these things can be learned and trained and practiced and worked on. So you're never a lost cause. You're never, you never like, oh, I can't talk to people. I can't interview. Yeah, you can. You got to practice a little bit. You got to gain some confidence. You got to be kind to yourself during the process. Oakley says it matters a lot. Sometimes the interviewer is going to be working with the person, so they want a decent, friendly person. Yeah. And that's the thing a lot of people also disregard about interviews. They don't realize is that the interviewer doesn't really care if you can solve that leak code problem. They don't really care if you can whiteboard out a perfect solution to a data structures and algorithms question. They care they care how you're interacting with them. What are your soft skills like? How are you approaching the question? Are you being analytical? Are you communicating well? Are you asking good questions? Are you being friendly? Are you being funny? What is your general demeanor like? Because that's what's going to affect that working relationship the most. Are you teachable? If you don't know the skill right now, does it look like you're going to be able to learn it? Yeah, okay, great. Then that's somebody that they want to hire, even if they don't know the skill. One of the sweetest, nicest people on my team right now, on my dev team right now that I work on, and like she's just the sweetest person in the world. When we hired her, she did not have like the basic main skill that we needed for this role. She just didn't have it. But what she did have was a fantastic personality, a real willingness to learn, general experience in the field. And she was able to convey that experience during the interview. So we hired her and we taught her and she learned and now she's doing it because, she just showed that she was the type of person that could. So those soft skills are so important. And I'm glad you brought that up, Ocleus. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that was a long intro, but those are some really important things that I like to bring up. And I realized I hadn't talked about them in a while, like interview skills, how important they are, soft skills, how you portray yourself, all those things matter. And speaking of, last thing I'm going to go on talk about on this is that I'm not prepared to talk about it just yet, but just me being here on stream and the way that I teach and the way that I talk has also opened up another potential opportunity for me. And I'll share more if it becomes relevant later. But yeah, so it's just the way, just me putting myself out there has also opened up another opportunity for me that somebody contacted me about saying like, oh my gosh, you're such, we love the way that you teach. We love the way that you talk about stuff. And we wanted to talk to you about this other thing. And so, those types of things are just putting yourself out there, learning how to convey yourself well is going to bring benefits to you. So give it a try, give it a practice. Okay, again, long intro, but wanted to cover that stuff. So let's go ahead and get back to Laravel. Oh, Shakespeare, hey. Oh, that's awesome. They say so. We were talking about conferences earlier and volunteering. If you can't, afford, or if you just don't want to pay for a conference, consider volunteering. So they say I volunteered at a web dev conference last fall. Even on the day I was working, I volunteered for a job helping the speakers. So I got to meet all the speakers and hear their talks. Absolutely, yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, you got to see all the talks, you got to meet all the speakers, you made some great connections, I'm sure. Yeah, in college, I volunteered for like the concert usher board. So we just like ushered people into the audiences at concerts. But I got to see basically like every show. Like I got to see Lady Gaga for free when I was in college, and could not have ever afforded a ticket, right? Just because I was a volunteer, an usher. And so I got to stand in the aisle and watch Lady Gaga at the height of her fame perform. And so, yeah, those types of things, when you just put yourself out there, you volunteer, you give a little bit of your time, you never know when that's going to pay dividends, just like it did for you, Shax. Yeah, yeah, local people. Hey, that's not bad. Making local connections is great. Then at the end, Chris Coyer and Douglas Crockford, some well known developers. That's so cool. Yeah, that's the way to do it. That's perfect. I love that you shared that. Thank you, Shax. That's amazing. Yeah. All right, so when we left off with Laravel last time, we were mostly covering kind of styling stuff. But prior to that, prior to the more styling elements, we looked at building basically the framework for a full stack application. And that included routes and views, creating a layout file, and also creating components. What is what is a component? Just in general terms. You don't have to know Laravel. This is not a Laravel specific thing. Components are pretty common across multiple frameworks. So in general, chat, when we are talking in terms of web development, what is a component? Does anybody remember? What is a component? Yeah, I like that answer, Peak. They say it's a reusable piece of front end code. Yeah. And what's a reason why we might want to create a reusable piece of front end code? Why do we care about doing that? Why do we want to create reusable chunks of code, especially on the front end, but on the back end too? If you remember, we had a good example of that in this application that we worked on so far. Why do we want to create reusable chunks of code? Catrate says, so we don't waste time reinventing the wheel. Yeah, and that's kind of a high level summary of it, right? Is that we don't want to be typing the same thing over and over again. And what happens with, let's say we have a nav bar, right? We have a nav bar. Reinventing the wheel is fun though. Sometimes it is, yeah. Let's say that we have a nav bar in our application and we have, 3 pages on that nav bar. We have home, about, and contacts. I don't know. But then later on, we decide to add like an info page. We decided to add a fourth page. So that would mean if we had separate nav bars on each of our pages, we would have to go into each page and update the nav bars individually on each one, right? And heaven forbid we make a typo and our nav bar, stops working on the info page, right? And each time we change a style, we have to go in. And if we add, if we go up to 6 pages, then all of a sudden we have to update the nav bar on 6 pages, 6 separate times. And it just grows exponentially as your application gets bigger. So the smart way to do it is to create reusable components. So for example, we would just build like a shell of that nav bar with our, page links and everything in it. And we would have that in a specific location, and then we would just reference that component on each of our individual pages. So we're just referencing the same single component 6 or 8 or 10 times. And so if we make a change to that one single component, that change will be reflected on every single location where it's referenced. So we're just changing basically the source, and then each reference will pick up any of those changes. So components are really useful when we go into more advanced web development, particularly with frameworks. So Laravel uses components, React uses components, Vue, all those other, all those other engines kind of use components. You don't even have to go as complicated as React, though. You could use something like EJS or Handlebars, just a templating engine. It's not even a framework. And that would allow you to use essentially components as well. They're called something different, but yeah, you can create these little reusable code snippets and just reference them as many times as you need to. So yeah, components are super useful. We worked on styling a little bit. We worked on active styling of specific links. We saw how we can pass essentially attributes using slot variables, right? So in a layout, we can have a slot variable. We can pass something into that slot and have it be rendered out inside of a component. We saw how we can pass in like attributes into a specific tag. So we can have a single component for multiple layout, for multiple like buttons, say, and we can have each of those button components have different styling, just passing in a different style each time we reference the component. So yeah, we can make these components dynamic, even though they're all referencing the same base component code. So it's pretty cool what we can do. You can have a lot of dynamic styling. And yeah, Laravel and React and other frameworks are all very good at that. Okay, so that was our little recap there. As always, as we get into the new stuff, feel free to ask questions at any point. There's no such thing as a silly question or a stupid question. Those don't exist. They're not real. So ask a question as you have them. Feel free to follow along. This type of thing is always best learned if you are actively following along. I know we are starting with lesson 6 here. If you're just coming in here today for the first time, you'll probably want to go back and watch the first episode where we cover lessons 1 through 5 so you can catch up. But if not, feel free to dive in with us now. And also you might have to help me with the audio, make sure the levels are good. If it's, I would like my voice and the video to be around the same volume. I think I have that set. But if I don't, please let me know. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And my bot should post, occasionally my bot should post a link to the website that we're using here, Laracasts. But if it doesn't, I'll keep an eye out. Let me just test that really quickly. I forgot to take a look at it before the stream, so I'm just going to test, see what it does. Yeah, there we go. Okay, great. So my bot is working. Cool. All right, let's kick it off here.
All right, welcome everybody to day 6. And actually on that note, we're about a weekend. If you're still going strong, congratulations, please keep going. Okay, so today should be fun. We're going to figure out how to pass data from our routes file into our view. But as always, of course, before we get into that, why don't we solve the homework challenge from the last episode? Let's go.
I don't remember what the homework was, so we're just going to do it along with him because I don't remember what it was. Oh, he's a little louder? Okay, I can bump him down a little bit. Thank you. All right, I bumped him down a couple notches. Let's see if that helps.
All right, homework. So if you remember, I asked you to update your navlink component to include a type prop. I said the type...
Oh, actually, okay. Sorry, guys. Yeah, we're actually not going to do this one because he's just going to do it and then back it out. So, just for time's sake, we're just going to watch him do this and then we will continue on with the new content. Essentially, what he's going to do here is sort of review how we can pass props, which is basically properties. How we can pass properties into a component and change the behavior of that component using properties. Okay? So, I'm just going to make this a little bigger so we can see it. We'll watch this part and then we'll go into the new stuff.
It could be an anchor tag or a button, and we should inspect that value to determine whether or not we create an anchor tag or a button. So here's one option. And first, let's create a default value. So by default, if you don't pass a type prop when you reference the component here, we will assume that it is an anchor tag, but it could be a button. So why don't we try? Like, let's imagine contact here should be a button. So I want to pass that in as a string so I don't have to include a colon because by default, it assumes a string, and that's what we want. All right. So the quick way to do it in this case is we could probably just get away with changing the tag name to reference our variable. Now, I say we could get away with this because I think it's going to work. Let's have a look. Refresh. And now we have home, about, but I bet when I click on contact, it doesn't work because it's being rendered as a button, as you see here. So yeah, it does work, but here's what I mean. If we switch back, notice our editor's struggling here. We got a lot going on. And if I hover over this squiggly line, it says tag start is not closed because it just can't handle something like this. So instead, what we might do is split it into two real tags. So here's what we could do. Let's undo it, bring it back to what we had, and we're going to take this in two steps. So first, we could open up traditional PHP tags, and I could say if type equals A, we're going to use the short tags, then display an anchor tag, and then down here, let's handle the else condition, and then finally, one more to close our conditional. Okay, so we could copy this, paste it in, and notice in this case, we could check if the type equals button, but in this case, it can only be an anchor tag or a button. So I can safely just say, if it's not an anchor tag, no matter what it is, we're going to treat it like a button. But yeah, if you want to be a little more strict, you can do that. Okay, so otherwise, create a button. So we're going to accomplish the exact same thing, but yeah, our editor will beat us up just a little bit less. All right, let's come back, refresh once again. And yeah, now we have home is an anchor tag, about is an anchor tag, and contact is a button. And of course, notice the button still has an href because we did pass it in. So of course, you would want to switch back. And if you're trying to create a button, then of course you would omit the href.
Okay, so I'm going to pause here for just a second and kind of review what he just did. So as a reminder, this is where the nav bar is defined in this sort of layout area here. And I did back his volume down a little bit. That's just so hopefully it's a little bit more even now. I backed it down a little bit more. Hopefully that's about okay. Hey, Frenetic, good to see you. And BR4, I did see your question. I will get to that in just a second. But yeah, so what he's doing here is we're defining the general layout of all the pages in this layout component right here. So component / layout.blade. And we're referencing our nav button components here. So notice how it says x-nav link. As a reminder, that is how we reference components in Laravel. You know, that's a little bit different than how we would do it in something like React. But this is how Laravel does it. You name a component, something like navlink, and then when you reference it, you say x dash whatever, right? So what we're doing here is we're referencing our navlink component, and then we can pass in attributes to it. So I can pass in, what the href is going to be, whether or not it's going to be active, based on the path, that type of thing. So we're referencing the same component 3 times, but we're passing in different data each time. And then inside the navlink component itself, we have additional logic, or what he's just done is he's added additional logic to essentially say, if it's active, then change the type to be, a button versus an anchor tag. So we can have additional logic inside the component itself to even determine additional behavior. So that's all he's demonstrating here. And we're passing that information in as, attributes here, and then we can pass in attributes, we can pass in props. Attributes are essentially things that are going to affect the behavior of the tag directly, so like an HTML attribute, whereas props are more like variables that we're passing in that may affect the logic of how that component is rendered.
In that case. But yeah, it's still going to work just the same. Okay, so now finally, step 2, like I said, we can use these traditional PHP tags, of course, but Blade includes helpers to simplify some of these steps. So just keep in mind, though, like behind the scenes, it all gets compiled down to vanilla PHP, as we've learned. But it's a little bit easier to use the Blade directives, just like what you learned about in the last episode when it came to props. So as it turns out, we could swap this out with a Blade directive called @if. So if, in this case, type equals A, then run this code. Next, this is else, right? So as you can guess, the Blade directive is called else. And then finally down here, endif, well, we have a Blade directive called endif. Yeah, that's what I mean. And let's reformat this real quick. There we go. It's the exact same thing. It's just a little bit easier on the eyes and easier on the fingers too. So let's go back to the browser, give it a refresh. Everything's working just like before. And again, I can't click on the context page because it's a button. That works. All right, but yeah, this was just an exercise. I'm undoing all of this because we don't need it in this case. It was just an example. Bring this back. I'm wearing out Command Z, but I think we are in business.
Okay, so now we're going to start with the new content here. But yeah, all he was really showing there is how we can affect behavior by passing in different props into a component. And he also showed a little bit of some of the little shortcuts we can use because we are using Blade with this Laravel project. So Blade is essentially just like a little helper that sits on top of Laravel. And it allows us to use some, we could just type everything out in raw PHP. That would be fine. That would work. But Blade gives us some little shortcut commands. I try to describe it as it's similar to the way that Express works with Node. So if you've ever built a full stack app just in plain JavaScript, you have probably used Node to set up your server, right? And you've probably just automatically installed Express every single time. You might not have thought about why, but if you're building it by hand from scratch, one of the first things you always install is one of the first things you probably always install is Express, and you might not even think about why, but essentially Express just makes it a heck of a lot easier than trying to build it in plain Jane Node. It gives you shortcuts. It gives you some built-in functions and methods that you can call that are just shorthand for common actions like listen and that type of thing. So that's kind of what Blade is doing for us here. So anytime we do that @ sign and then, a keyword like if, we are essentially under the hood, we're just referencing a traditional PHP expression. Frenetic says, because I was late, you may have already covered this, but how did your interview go? Yeah, I did. I ended up doing 3 rounds of interviews in a very short period of time. So all that prep work was very helpful. All three interviews went really well. They liked me a lot. I was one of the finalists. I was not selected for the role, but that's okay because I felt like the interview went very well, especially with the extremely short amount of prep time that I had. I just really did not have a lot of time to prepare, and they did send me a personalized message afterwards saying how much they really did like me as a candidate. I just didn't have the specific, technical skill combo that they were looking for, which I already knew I didn't. I wasn't, it was a different kind of field that I'm currently in, but it was worth a shot, and I made it all the way to I made it all the way to the finalists, so I felt like it went quite well, and now I have a nice connection with those folks, so that was good. And I do want to go back to BR4's question because I like it a lot. They say, quick question, do you take notes or just default to code? Yeah, so when I'm learning something new like this, I do not take notes. And, each person is different, right? But for me, the best experience, the best way that I learn is by, oh, and also thank you for the follow, BR4, by the way. Sorry, I missed that earlier. The best way that I learn is by just doing. Just do it. Don't, write it down. Just do the code. Do the code, get the code working, and then that's your notes, right? You don't need to take double notes because what he said is in the video already. If I need to go back and watch it again, I will. But I'm just going to go straight to applying it, because what we always say on this channel is that the two essentially secrets to actually learning something are repetition and application. Those two things, repetition and application. So as soon as you learn something in this lesson, you should immediately turn around and apply it, and then you should come back later and you should repeat it. So that's maybe building it again, building something slightly different, but applying the same concepts, that type of thing. You should do it over and over again until it becomes natural and your brain decides to store it in memory. And that's literally how your brain works. Your brain is not going to store anything in long-term memory until it determines that it's important enough to store. And so how do you tell your brain that something is important enough to store? Well, you just keep repeating it and applying it until your brain says, okay, this is something I'm going to have to reference again. I need to store this. This needs to be permanent. Because otherwise your brain is lazy. It's not going to store stuff it doesn't need. And that's why, all those all-nighter study sessions that you pulled in college, right before an exam, that's why they don't work. Because you're just reading something once and expecting to learn it, and that's not how that works. So yeah, repetition and application, those are the keys. And so that's why I don't take notes. I just apply what I'm learning, and then I turn around. My secret is I turn around then and I teach it back to you guys. So that's my repetition. So application, I do it right away, and then I come on stream, I teach it to you all, repetition, and then application when we code it live here again on stream. So this is for my benefit, I'm getting all this practice. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with writing a cheat sheet either. Like, I totally get that, BR4. Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with writing a cheat sheet. But I think a mistake that a lot of people make when they're trying to learn something new is that they'll just watch the content, they'll write it down verbatim. They'll just write out what the person says, or they'll write out vocabulary words or whatever, but they won't ever apply what they're hearing or what they're learning from this person. They'll just write it down and be like, okay, I have it now. Okay, great. But you haven't learned anything. You've just transferred this information from a video to a piece of paper or to a Word document or OneNote or whatever. You've just moved it around. You haven't actually put it in your brain. How do you put it in your brain? You put it in your brain by doing it and by repeating it until it's absolutely in there. Yep. And you can add comment. I highly suggest commenting your code. Absolutely. As long as you're actually coding it. That's the secret is you got to actually do the code. Do it and then preferably do it again. And then add all the comments that you want in addition. No, you're all good, BR4. I answered that question because I liked it. It's a good question. Thank you for asking it. Yeah. All right, let's get into the new stuff now.
Okay, so let's move on to the topic for this episode, which is passing data to views. So let's close this out, and I'm going to go to my routes file. Now, I'll let you know right now. It helps initially to manually open the directory and find the file. But in real life, I'm not doing that. Usually I have the sidebar closed, and in my editor, and probably yours too, you could hit something along the lines of Command or Control P, and then you can type the file that you want to access. So in this case, it is web.php. And yeah, that's just normally how
and we're going to keep navigating like normal. Yes, you can do shortcuts to pages, to locations in VS Code. Absolutely, you can. He's using a different editor, but in VS Code, you can do that. We're going to keep navigating like normal just because I think it makes it easier to follow if I'm not jumping around from page to page. So we're not going to do any shorthand. We're just going to navigate using the sidebar like normal. But as a reminder, this is our routes. Let's see where we're at. We're in web. Okay. We are in routes, and let's see. I think I'm missing some routes here. Make sure I'm in the right. Yeah, I'm in the right one. Okay. Yeah. So I think. Yeah. About home. About contact. Uh, and I am running the right one. Sorry, I'm just looking to see. If I have the right one running. Hmm. Hey, Katra. I'm totally lost. Is this still a code we created for a hair salon? No, no, no. This is a completely different project. This is a different example for learning Laravel. Uh, but you're welcome to hang around with us. Yes, I'm running. That's the right one that I'm running. And if you wanted to catch up, Katra, we have got. I've got. I think you probably haven't. Did you join us for the Python series? Because like that was like several months. That and the hair salon thing was before that. So, yeah, I've got a whole Python series up on YouTube now. We've got some additional projects. So yeah, we're starting a Laravel series now. But yeah, you're welcome to go back a couple of Sundays and start learning Laravel with us too, if you would like. That one's those are still Laravel. The start of the Laravel series is still just on Twitch. I don't have it on YouTube yet. All right, so I am going to these routes. I'm just wondering why my routes folder doesn't look the way I expect. Sorry, I'm just getting myself sorted out here. Probably should have done this before the stream. Okay, so that's displaying those things. So it's not that one. I just have a couple different versions of this running. But yeah, it's good to see you here again, Katra. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's weird. Yeah, it didn't show up at first, but it is. Okay, that's right. Cool. Sorry about that. No, of course, Cartwright. The start of this. So I would go back like to my first Laravel stream, and that'll be lessons 1 through 5. And then we kind of jumped ahead a little bit and started working on the final project for my job interview. But just watch. You only have to watch one stream to catch up. And that's lessons 1 through 5 of this Learn Laravel in 30 days. Watch lessons 1 through 5, and then you'll be caught up and you'll be able to join this stream. Yeah. All right. So we're here. We're good. We're good. Sorry about that, folks. I had to kind of get myself sorted out. All right, we're in the right file now, and we're going to keep going. Okay.
I would navigate my project. But yes, sometimes I will open the sidebar just to make it crystal clear where we're going in the code base. Okay, cool. So why don't we stick with the home page? So as it turns out, we can pass a second argument to this view function that will be an array where each of the keys will be extracted into variables once your view or your template is loaded. So for example, if I have greeting equals hello, well, now when I load my view, I will have access to a variable called greeting. Let's try it out. Make sure you're working along, by the way. So open up the sidebar. Again, we will go.
All right, so this should be somewhat familiar if you've ever used something like EJS before, right? If you've ever used EJS before, you have done something similar to this. You've tried to you've rendered a view, and then you've also realized that you can pass in additional data to that view, right? You can pass in an object with stuff in it, and then you can have that stuff render out in your view. So that's essentially what he's doing here. We can just declare something and then have it show up.
Go into our home view, and now I have access to a greeting. So I could swap this out with greeting, period. All right, so let's switch back, refresh, and whoops, looks like we have an error. And actually, this is a good opportunity to be introduced to Laravel's error page, which is really good. When I was just getting started, it wasn't nearly as helpful. But yeah, in this case, we can see the issue. It looks like it's related to our component, and we have an unclosed bracket. So I might have been a little bit too aggressive when we hit that Command-Z button. All right, did that fix it? Yes, it did. And sure enough, we have our greeting. So if we come back to routes, Yo, come back, refresh. It is working properly. So let's do another one. Name,
Yeah, so now we're going to pass in a couple of different possibilities here. So I'll go ahead and follow along with this. So this is essentially like the way that an object would work in JavaScript. It's you have key value pairs, right? And so this is going to be then the name of the variable that we're referencing essentially, and then this is going to be the value of that variable. So you define it as key value pairs. And so I can say for name, I can say Wolf, like so. Save that, and then we can pass both those values in. RDT says, how'd the interview go? Well, it did go well. I didn't end up getting the position, but I was one of the finalists. So I think given the turnaround time that I had, which was not a lot, I felt like it went very well. So yes, didn't get the role, but I was one of the finalists. Not bad for a couple weeks of Laravel prep. Yeah.
none of these matter. I will do Larry robots. Okay, now we have a greeting variable and a name variable. So I can reference that here.
All right, so now, like we talked about before, we're going to go back to our view and I'm going to go to resources and views and home. And so, yeah, we can reference this with our little escape window here, say greeting, and say, yeah, my name is Wolf. My name is, and then we can, again, put it in brackets. And I know that's behind the chat window. I will pull it over in just a second. My name is name. So that's what I called that variable, right? Yeah, okay. Let's save that. If I pull it over, so you can see how we reference those variables there, like so.
Just like that. Come back, refresh.
Okay, save that. Make sure I've got these saved. And refresh. Yep, there we go. So as soon as I refresh that page, we can see that it includes my custom variables. Yo from the homepage, my name is Wolf. Ta-da, pass them in. Again, this is probably very familiar to you if you have used any templating engine in the past, like EJS or Handlebars, much less React or something similar.
Everything's working. All right, very cool. So now let's switch back. Let's get rid of all of this, actually. Let's switch back and pass through something slightly more complex. Ultimately, in this course, we're going to build a jobs board. So why don't we start thinking about that? Maybe we could have a list of jobs that are currently available. So the variable name will be jobs, or the key name is jobs. And that won't be a string. It will be an array of available jobs, where each item is its own array. And then you could have things like this, like what is the title of this job? Well, maybe director, and then maybe salary, and we'll lock that to, whatever, $50,000 a year. Okay, so there's one item. Why don't we do a total of 3? This next one is programmer, and this one, you know what? With AI, we're going down the tubes. Let's bring this down to $10,000.
That's depressing. I don't agree with that assessment, by the way. The fact that he said, oh, AI is going to take our gerbs, and the fact that he put the salary down to $10,000, slightly offending, but it's all right. We'll roll with it. So we'll just fill this out. Essentially, we're just manually sort of declaring an array of arrays, right? Each of these items is going to be its own kind of self-contained little object. We set a title and a salary. So we'll say director. $50,000 for a director position also seems low, but hey, guess it depends on where you live. So we'll put that in, and then we'll do another one. Get a comma there. So for this one, we'll say programmer. And you know what? I'm going to buck the trend. We're going to say 80 grand for that. I'm not going to say 10 grand. That offends me. We'll take off the second item here. Okay.
Dollars a year to be a human programmer. And then finally, why don't we have teacher at a school? Maybe.
That's the weekly salary. Oh man, I wish. That'd be awesome. 10 grand a week, I would jump for that. So yeah, for the last one here, we'll say teacher. And yeah, well, teachers deserve to be paid more. We're going to keep teacher. We'll put teacher up at 90K. That's what they deserve. Not necessarily what they're getting, but what they deserve.
Maybe $40,000 or something like that. All right, so now when we load our view, we will have access to a jobs variable that is equal to a list of jobs. Now let's go ahead and loop over them. So again, I could open up PHP and say for each, but let's instead use one of the blade directives. And again, what's cool about these directives is you can guess what they're called. If I want to do a for each, then the blade directive is called for each. All right, for each jobs as job. And then, of course, you need to declare the end of the block, right? So you will almost always have an end and then the name of the directive, end for each. Okay, so let's begin with a simple list item where I echo out the job title. And let's have a look in the browser.
Okay, going back there a little bit. So yeah, we're just doing a for each loop here. Again, this should also look familiar to you if you've ever used a templating engine of any kind. You're just creating your little loop. You're looping over the list items that you're passing in. And in each side of each one, you're creating a new list item. And you're just saying, all right, go into the job that we're currently looping through and grab the title. So that's what he's doing here.
I echo out the job title.
Yeah. Go into that object and retrieve the job title. Like so. And list it.
And let's have a look in the browser. Refresh, and there we go. We have 3 jobs, a director, a programmer, and a teacher. Next, why don't we do a colon, and we'll say pays, and then we'll do job, salary, per.
Okay. So now I'm going to go outside of my little logic bubble here, and I'm going to add some text. And just note that, I have to create a new little logic window if I want to do that second reference to the object. So I want to reference salary. I have a second little logic window here, and I say, all right, reference the salary. Like so, and then per year. Ta-da! Okay. So now if I refresh, we should see that. Yep. There we go. Looks good. And now again, all this stuff is hard coded, right? This is not how your real application is probably going to behave, but we're just kind of demonstrating the ability to pass this stuff through. We are not going to hard code this. This is very quickly going to migrate from being hard coded to a far better solution, which is what, chat? How would we normally store data like this? If I wanted to have a list of 1,000 jobs, how would I store that data? Where would that stuff live? I'm going to hydrate here for a second. I haven't done that at all. Dooku says, DB. Yeah, we would normally store this kind of stuff in a database. And that's actually the next thing we're going to cover in this series that I'm really excited about, because Laravel handles databases in a way that is so graceful and beautiful that a way that I haven't seen before in other frameworks. So yeah, Laravel is amazing for databases. And so I'm really excited when we finally get to that point, which is just a couple lessons from now. So yeah, databases are really fun in Laravel, and can't wait till we get there. But yeah, that's how we would normally store this type of data. And then we would send it through just the same way he's describing here.
Here. Come back, refresh. There we go. Why don't we make this bold? So what I'll do is wrap this within a simple strong tag.
Peak, I like that. You say, oh, wow, it surprises me to hear a SQL dev say that. All the SQL devs I work with really dislike ORMs. Okay, let me be clear. I still prefer writing SQL. Like, absolutely. If you give me a choice, let me write the SQL. But I'm not denying that for people who are not SQL devs, like if SQL is not, like if SQL is not your, like if you just want to build a web app and like you just want to do it efficiently and fast, like Laravel has lots of great ways to do that, to quickly deploy and manage databases without knowing SQL or with only knowing a little bit of SQL. But if I'm just working directly with a database, absolutely get that ORM. I'm going to pump that ORM out the window, and I'm just gonna write SQL directly because it's so much faster. But if your goal is to just build a web app, then Laravel has some great ways to do it. Yeah, so yeah, my opinion really doesn't differ, but I do appreciate what Laravel does in terms of just making it easier to work with databases. Yeah, I still don't like ORMs though.
And there we go. So now, with that in mind, why don't we tweak things just a little bit?
Yeah, so we're just going to add a little strong tag here. That's all that he did. And just around the job title.
Instead of an about page, I'm going to change this to a jobs page. Get rid of that.
All right, so we're doing a little bit of quick renaming here. We're going to rename our about page to jobs. Like that. And so if I rename this page, what else am I going to have to do in order to make sure it still works? So if I just rename this, let's see what happens. Refresh. All right. So nothing changed on the home page. Nothing changed on the contact page. But if I go to the about page, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Yeah, so what else do I have to do to fix this? I renamed my my view here from about to jobs. So what else do I have to do? Peak says, learning SQL definitely improved my web dev skills. Oh, 100%. Everybody should learn SQL. Everybody should learn SQL, but no matter what field you're in. But if you don't know SQL, then an ORM is the next best thing. What do I got to do to fix this, chat? Yeah, Frenetic says, update the route. Yeah, we got to change the file name in the route. Exactly. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go down here to my about, what used to be my about page. And I'm going to change it to jobs. So let's try that first. Yeah, there we go. All right, so that's fixed. It's returning the right view now, but we're also going to probably need to update this route and then anything that references that route. So we'll see what he does next here.
And if I were to come back to web, now this could become jobs, and that's going to load a view called job.
Okay, so yeah, he's going to go ahead and change the route here too. Jobs, like that. And then say hello from, let's change this to be job, job page, and job listings. Okay.
Jobs. Okay, so now I'm going to take or steal all of this and paste it in, like so.
All right, so we're also copying this sort of static data that we coded in, and we're going to paste it down here in the jobs view. Again, this is not what you would do. Hopefully you wouldn't be doing this in real life. Yeah, you would be actually, loading this stuff into a database and fetching it dynamically. But for now, we're going to fix this later. But for now, we're just going to hard code it.
And then this can return to a simple homepage. All right. So all I did was create a new route that listens for when the user visits example.com or example.test/jobs. And in response, it loads a view called jobs, and it passes through this data that we're currently hard coding. But of course, in real life, that will probably be fetched from a database. And we'll talk about that in an episode or two. All right. So let's go into home.
Yeah, so just doing some cleanup here. I'm going to grab this for loop. I'm just going to copy it. And I'm just going to say, return this to just say, hello from the home page again. And I will drop this logic for the for each loop in here instead.
Snatch our for each and paste it into jobs. All right, and then finally, let's update the about page to point to jobs.
Yeah, and this is the last thing we need to do. Since we renamed our view, we need to go back into our layout. And so that's in components and then layout. We're going to go back in there and we're just going to change the reference from about to jobs. So this currently says for this nav link, go to this route. And if the request is for that particular page, then it should be made active. So we need to change the styling and we need to make sure that the route is updated. So save that. Now let's just give it a quick test. Make sure it works. I've been known to screw things up. All right, refresh. Oh, 404 not found. Okay. Oh, because I was on the about page. So gonna go back to the home page. There we go. And let's see, refresh. Oh, I need to also update my mobile nav link too. It's in two different places, which is not the best, but that's what we have. So I'm going to go down here to the mobile version, which is somewhere. I'm just doing a quick search for it. Oh, nope. Ah, here we go. It's down here. So I'm going to say jobs and jobs. Okay, save that. Okay, I'm still missing something somewhere. It's still trying to go to the about location. So we'll go back to the home page again. All right, there we go. Okay, jobs. There we go. Now it works. Okay, I just had to refresh it again. Cool. Peak says proof that reusing code is best. Absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing examples of that here where we're seeing some repetition. We're seeing some things that could probably be, turned into components or whatever. And so that's what you want to do, in the actual app. So home, jobs, contact, all these things work now. All right.
Like so. All right, refresh. And now we have a home page and a brand new jobs page that lists all of the jobs that are currently available for your business or whatever. Very cool. So I want to finish up, though, by making each of these clickable. And when I click on it, it should take me to a dedicated job listing page. So, how are we going to do this? Well, let's go back to jobs. And let's do this. We're going to have a list item. And of course, this should be wrapped. If you omit the UL, the browser will create it for you. But yeah, just a decent practice is to include it. So now we know these are all going to be anchor tags. So I will wrap them like so.
Okay. So we're going to turn each of these items on this page here into clickable links. And then each of those is going to navigate to a specific page, which is going to display more information about the job. So that's what we're going to do. Turn these into clickable links. And so in order to do that, I'm going to head back to my display page here. We'll wrap it in a UL like you mentioned, because we didn't do that originally. So wrap that in a UL. Da-da. Hey, Shad, welcome. Good to have you here. Hope you're having a good day. All right, do a UL. That's going to keep generating those LIs. Great. And then each of these LIs is going to be essentially wrapped in an anchor tag. So we've got our for each, we've got our LIs, and then I'm going to move this down and reformat it a little bit like that. Take that back there. Okay. And then this is going to be an anchor tag. There we go. Oops. There.
And this is going to take us to a new route. Why don't we say jobs / and then maybe some kind of identifier or a slug that represents each individual job that we're offering. So let's add an identifier like ID. We're going to keep it really simple. ID is 1 for this one. ID is 2 for that one, and ID is 3 for this one. So now we have one key that is unique and will always be unique that represents this individual item. Okay, so now if we switch back to our job listings page, think about it. If I said job/1, we now have a hook of sorts that will say, all right, fetch me the job that has an ID of 1.
Yeah, and this probably also sounds familiar if you've done something like if you've done, built a React app before, maybe you can set the not jabs, you can set the route, and then you can direct to a specific page or a specific subpage that's dynamic based on the content by having that identifier. So again, ideally this would be also dynamic, and we're going to make it dynamic in a minute. But for now, we're just going to hard code it to demonstrate the potential here. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, all right, go to a particular location and display information about the particular job that we're currently on. Here we're hard coding it to always be the first job. And we'll fix that in the route as well. We're going to add this unique identifier to each job. So we'll say ID and then 1, 2, hang on. Come on, baby. There we go. 3. 1, 2, 3. And so if I were to say ID 1, we would want to pull up this information, ID 2, this information, ID 3, this information, etc. You get it. Okay.
If I did job/3, we know find me the job that has an ID of 3. We have a way to do that. Okay, but now how do we create the route for this? Because really we need a route that says, listen for jobs/ and then some kind of value. It could be anything. It could be dynamic. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to go back to my routes file here. I'm going to create a brand new route. And why don't we reuse this one here to save some time? Listen for jobs/ and then could be 1, could be 2, could be 3, could be 10,000, right? So why don't we instead represent this with, I don't know, like a ID, or we could even call it job. What job do you want? But yeah, I'm going to call it ID just for now.
Okay. So, thank you for the follow, Zaval 3TA. Zaval 3TA. Thank you so much for the follow. Good to have you here. So yeah, we're just adding an additional route here, and this should also look familiar, even if you've just built a regular Node or Express application. You can essentially kind of pass, I can't spell either, you can essentially kind of pass almost like a variable inside your route, and you denote that with the curly braces just like this. So if a route comes in that contains jobs/ and then some dynamic value, it will route that traffic according to whatever this dynamic value happens to be. So we can pass that in, and it's going to be dynamic, and we denote the fact that it's going to be dynamic. It's not going to be the word ID, it's going to be a number. We denote that by the curly braces here.
So here's the cool thing about Laravel. Laravel will automatically detect that this is wrapped in braces, and it knows, oh, this is a wildcard. So I'm gonna grab that, I'm gonna contain it, and then I will pass it to this function so that you can use it however you want. I'll show you. Let's call it ID, and then I'm going to dump an ID. And actually, instead of dump, I'm going to switch over to a DD function, which means dump and die. So dump the ID and then kill the execute.
Yeah, so again, given that this is dynamic, we can treat it almost like a variable, and then we can take that variable and we can pass it directly into our function here as an argument. So I'm going to say DD just to show that this works, and we'll pass that in, do that. And remember, in Laravel, semicolons matter, so don't forget your semicolons. Pass that in. We're going to just show it on the screen and then kill the function.
Execution. Because all I care about right now is just quickly seeing what is the value of this variable. So as it turns out, this dump function and the DD function, you are going to love, I promise. Okay, so let's switch.
Okay, Tibred asks, is the value anything except a / character? Is the value anything except a / character? So yeah, the slashes here, I'm not sure I fully understand your question, um, but essentially the slashes are always going to be interpreted as like steps in the route, right? They're going to be interpreted as like individual components of the route. And then anything inside the brackets is going to be passed in as kind of like a variable. And it's going to be a variable then that we are going to call ID. It's going to be some kind of a dynamic value. We're going to store it in the word ID. And then if we want to then make use of that, we can pass it into our function and do stuff with it. Yes, so the slashes are delimiters for the route in general. Every single route is always going to have slashes. Those just denote kind of the steps in the route. So, I could have 5 or 6 slash delimited sort of steps in this route and never even have a dynamic value at all. So slashes are always there. But the thing that determines the dynamic part is the curly braces. The curly braces determine the dynamic part of the route. As Rex says, typical API development. Yes, this is typical. He's kind of talking about it like it's something that's special to Laravel, and it isn't. So if you've built an API before, this is very typical, which is good, right? That's a good thing. I feel like I wish he would have called that out a little bit more to be like, yeah, this is something that you can do in pretty much any API. And so if you've already done this, you should know, this is how it works. It's not something that's unique to Laravel. It just works in pretty much any API. Yeah. Chad says no converting string car to integers like in C#. Yeah, there is some of that you got to be careful about when you're passing stuff back and forth. Yeah, it is pretty flexible to some degree. All right, so we've got this DD. All right, cool.
Switch back. Example.test/jobs/1, and we.
Yeah, so now what we're going to do is we're going to essentially kind of hard code navigation to that route. So /jobs, right? We're already there. And then we're just going to say /1. And what that's going to do is pass in that 1 as essentially a variable into our route. And then that variable is going to get passed in and just like written to the console, sort of. Yep, there we go. So it's passed it in and it wrote it. It's probably hard to see. Let me zoom in. There we go. It wrote it to the console. So I could pass in whatever I want. It's not going to care. 1000. There we go. Pass it in, write it to console, and kill the function. So yeah, you get it.
I get 1. If I do 3, then we get 3. So yeah, notice it's a wildcard, and Laravel took care of all of the work of grabbing it.
Oh, sorry, Shad. They say I need to reduce my screen res. The feed is chopping in and out. You should be able to change the resolution of the video. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you should be able to click the little gear icon and change the resolution down if you need to. You did? Okay. I am using a setting in Streamlabs that's supposed to be like dynamic resolution. Maybe I shouldn't use that. It's just something new I tried this time. I think it might be screwing with my video quality. This stream is being recorded, so you can always come back and watch it later. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that. I'm not sure if that's something I can change. If 140, you're so fuzzy now. Yeah, it is being recorded though, so you can always go back and watch the recording. Yeah, I'll probably turn that off for the next stream. Looks fine on my end. It probably depends on your bandwidth. I think it's probably trying to upscale my stream because this monitor that I'm using is very high resolution. So yeah, but it is recorded. You can always come back and watch it.
Isolating it and passing it to our closure here, or the callback function, which is so cool, isn't it? Okay, so now think about it. I'm going to duplicate this jobs listing, but again, we could extract it, and later we're going to do that because a bunch of duplicated jobs isn't a great idea. But yeah, what I could do is have our list of jobs here, and then all we have to do is say, well, give me the job where the ID equals the one that you passed in. So why don't we say job equals, and do you know how to do this? Well, here's a number of ways to do it. You could do a for each, loop over each of the items, and then manually check, is the ID of that item equal to the ID that we're trying to reference? If so, that's the one you want. But as it turns out, you're using a framework, so you should leverage the framework. I will teach you about collections later in the series, but for now, it would be helpful to know that Laravel includes an ARR class, and that stands for array, of course. And this gives you access to countless methods, as you can see here, to interact with arrays. So if I want to find the first item within an array that matches some kind of criteria, I could use the first function. I give it our array, and then I provide a function, and this function will be called for each item within the array, and it will receive the current item. So in this case, it's going to loop over the jobs, and for each item, it will pass that into your function. So job would be equal to this on the first iteration, then this one, then this one. You get it. Okay, so now this should return a Boolean that indicates, is this the one you mean? Is this the first one you're trying to find? So in our case, we're going to say return job ID equals the ID that was passed in. But as you may know, because we're in a closure here, I don't have access to the ID here. So you have two ways to solve this. One, with traditional PHP, you would add use. Use the ID, make that available here, and that would do the trick. Another option is to instead use a short function that was only recently introduced as part of PHP 8.x, one of them. So that would take the form of this. fn, accept your job, then use an arrow, and then do, once again, job ID equals ID. But notice we don't run into that problem where we have to add use, and that's because of the scoping here. And this will
Okay, so that's an arrow function, right? What he just did there. So he changed it from a more traditional function format to an arrow function. So here's sort of various languages and frameworks kind of cribbing off of each other a little bit, right? Because that was something that was fairly recently introduced into JavaScript as well in like 2015, and now it's something that's been introduced into Laravel as well. Is essentially the concept of the single line arrow function. So I'll catch up with him here. So I'm going to grab the jobs listing again. Make sure I get the whole thing. There we go. And then in here, we're going to say jobs, okay? And then take this, paste it in, get my semicolon. And then I'm going to essentially use an array method here to find the first value. So I should be able to just say array, and then say first, and take the value of jobs that we're passing in, jobs, and then say fn for whatever job we're currently looping through. Take the ID value and compare it to whatever ID we've passed in. I'll move this over a little bit. Okay, so first jobs, comma, fn, take whatever job we're currently looping through and say for that job, check the ID. I'm going to put quotes around it. There we go. And then say, does it equal, and we're using double equals here, just like in JavaScript, does it equal the value of ID with a semicolon. Peak says, oh, I've been using Laravel for a while, didn't know about that. Yeah, that's cool, right? Some of this stuff is maybe a little bit newer and may not be in your existing code base, so you might not know about it. Definitely. Cool stuff.
We'll do the exact same thing. And generally, if you can use a short closure here for things like this, I would recommend it. If it's new to you and it feels weird, everything feels weird at the beginning. Stick with it, and then you don't think about it ever again. All right, but do whatever one you feel most comfortable with right now. That's most important. And that'll give us our job. Okay, so now let's leverage our dump.
Okay, and also too, he kind of did that pretty quickly there, but he's also just setting, all right, so we're setting we're essentially assigning whatever value we return here, we're assigning it to a variable. So whatever that job information, whether it's this one, or this one, or this one, we're assigning it to a variable.
Or our DD function to just do a sanity check. Did that?
Yep. And then we're just going to console log it, essentially. We're just going to say DD, oops, not that, DD, just dump the value of that variable. Hopefully we get the whole thing. Rex says, have you done or plan to do a series on data structures and algorithms? Sorry for the off-topic question. I have actually done a series on data structures and algorithms. It was a long time ago. Oh man, probably like a year and a half ago I did. But yeah, if you look on my YouTube channel, it should be in there, DSNA. Yeah, I did that a while back. Haven't done one in a while. Might do one again at some point. Um, I don't have a ton of traditional experience with data structures and algorithms, just because my background is very much sort of hands-on learning on the job. Like I don't have a really traditional computer science education. But I would recommend if you want to really get in depth with data structures and algorithms, I would recommend maybe somebody like the Primagen on YouTube and Twitch. The Primagen, it has a course, I think, on data structures and algorithms, like going through it on Twitch, on YouTube. If you really want to dive deep into that. I mean, I did a very cursory sort of first look at DSNA. But yeah, Primagen, I'd probably recommend him.
That work. All right, let's come back to the browser.
All right, let's
All
see
right,
this
refresh.
Works. Yeah. Yeah, Primagen has like taught courses on DSNA, so definitely probably a better resource than I am here. All right. So yeah, I'm going to pass in, we're going to do like jobs 3, let's say. Oh, okay. Parse error, unexpected, syntax error, unexpected token. Okay. I probably forgot a something. Let's go back a little bit. I think, maybe this one here. See if that's my mistake. Nope. Okay. So I need to see what that should be. Back it up just a little bit. Scroll up. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, okay, there we go. I just didn't quite get this formatting right here because yeah, we're declaring this as a variable. It's a list of jobs. So it needs to be like this and then set it equal to this array. And that looks good. Okay, let's try that. Okay, and good. So we're getting closer. And then I'm probably missing a closing bracket somewhere or a closing parenthesis. So pass in the IT to that. This is why you code along, right? Because you won't find these types of mistakes if you don't code along. Am I missing a semicolon? Oh, I'm missing a semicolon here. Yeah, duh. There it is. That's the thing, man. Coming from JavaScript to Laravel, that's been my biggest stumbling block is the friggin' semicolons. Like, the fact that they actually matter. Yeah, thank you, Dooku. Yeah, thank you, guys. There we go. Look at that. Awesome. We did it. Rex says, even when I code along, it doesn't stick. Yeah, and so that's great. It sounds like you're getting the first part of learning, which is application. Awesome. But the other thing you got to do, Rex, is you got to do the other half of that, which is the repetition. So then you got to go back. So yeah, you can anybody can code along with a tutorial, right? Anybody can code along with a tutorial. That's half of the battle. Good job. And then the second part is going back and then building something with it. You know, not just doing the tutorial again, but saying, all right, I'm going to take this, I'm going to build something with it. We're going to build a project. And then that'll really test your knowledge. That'll make you Google stuff. That'll make you rewatch stuff and really figure out where your knowledge gaps are. So if you're just watching tutorials and you're like, why can't I ever learn anything? The problem is you're only doing half the work. You're doing the coding along part, which is great. You're doing the application, but you also got to do the repetition, which will then lead to more application. And it feeds itself, right? It's a cycle that feeds itself. So you got to do the second half of that.
But as you may know, because we're in a closure here, I don't have access. Take the form of this. And it feels up. Okay, so now let's leverage our dump or our DD function. All right, refresh. We are on job/3, and sure enough, it found that item. Let's go to job/2. It found that item. Job/1. Very cool. But now what if it's job/5? We get null. So right now we have to be aware of that. The user might request a job that does not exist, and we have to figure out what to do in that situation. Okay, but happy path first. So now I'm going to return job, and I will pass through our job to the view. Finally, right here, we can use the fully qualified class path, but instead I'm going to import it. So you can do it manually or use whatever shortcuts.
Okay, so he's doing a couple different things there. We're going to return a new view called job, which we haven't created yet. And we're going to pass in essentially that array into the view, so it can be used. The other thing he's mentioning here about importing, he's referencing this specific array sort of class here. He's mentioning this specific class here. His automatically tries to put the import string into the body of the code. VS Code doesn't do that. I think if we go up here, oh, it didn't import it. We'll see if that causes a problem. But it'll either automatically put like an import string at the top of the file. This may not be necessary. We'll see. No, it worked though. Yeah, it worked. So it didn't even have to import it. It just let us immediately access any of the methods associated with this class. So didn't have to do an import. Wasn't necessary. You could do it if you wanted, but we can kind of skip over this part.
Your editor provides. In PHP Storm, I can press Option Return and do cleanup code. And now notice it automatically imports that at the top. Okay, so are we on the same page? We have a new route to show a job. Right now, we're just duplicating the list of jobs, but we'll fix that soon, I promise. And then we search for the job that has the matching ID that's included as part of the URI. Once it finds it, and this is happy path, so we assume that we're going to find it, we load a view.
Okay, so I just got to add the code for the view. So we'll say return view, and then we're going to call it job, which again, we haven't built this one yet, job. And then we're going to pass in the data that we just discovered. Job. Okay, and then semicolon. I'm not going to forget it this time. Nope. Like that.
All right, let's go into our view now. And it looks like we don't have one yet. So I will copy jobs, paste it, and call this one job.blade.
Yeah, so just going to copy the existing jobs view, rename it, and we're going to call it job.blade. As a reminder, we're using Blade here as kind of our helper, or as our templating helper. So it sits in between Laravel and, it sits in between us and Laravel and gives us those little, convenient shortcuts and formatting help and that type of thing.
Blade.php. And then down here, maybe whatever you want. We could have an H2. This would be job title. And then we don't have much else. We could do a salary. This job pays job salary per year.
Yeah, so nothing crazy, just kind of doing a little formatting, just testing to make sure that we can pass in these values into our view. So job title and another thing too that I wanted to mention is if you're having trouble like watching a tutorial and really absorbing what you're learning, do what I'm doing right now, where, he says something and then I'm not only coding it out, I am restating what he said in slightly different words. I'm attempting to summarize what he just said in my own words. I've coded it out, and just to make sure that I understand what he's saying, can I summarize it? Can I paraphrase it? If I can't, then that probably means that I didn't understand what he said, or I didn't understand what we're doing. Yeah. So that's another option too. If I were to try to summarize this lesson to my dog, would I be able to? Or, if you have a significant other or kids or a baby or, anything, any creature or human that will sit down and listen to you for 30 minutes, can you summarize what you learned? Is that possible? Babies and pets are good for that kind of thing. Your significant other might not be, as patient. I don't know them, but babies, dogs, and cats tend to be pretty good listeners. Although their feedback is sometimes questionable.
And that's good enough for a little demo here. Real quick, let's add a couple classes here. These are Tailwind classes, text large. You can leave it blank if you want, but
Yeah, as Dooku said, the dog will agree with what you said anyway. Yeah, for the most part, dogs are going to be pretty supportive. Uh, they aren't going to have a very good grasp of, the fundamentals of web development, so you got to be cautious about that, definitely. So we'll say font bold, text large. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm gonna leave these alone for now. We're gonna come back to them later, so it's all good. But yeah, I appreciate that. Um, for let's see. Oh yeah, Peak says you can explain to ChatGPT as well. I prompt. I think this is how this works, and it usually lets me know if I'm missing something. Yeah, yeah. We were kind of talking about that at the beginning of this stream, in that you can use ChatGPT for those types of like conversations, right? If you are maybe if you want to practice your job interview skills, right? Or yeah, if you're trying to really digest a concept, you do always want to be careful in using ChatGPT as like a source of knowledge. You always want to, trust but verify, right? GPT can sometimes be misleading or incorrect about these sorts of things. For broad topics, it's probably fine. But if you're trying to get in deep on anything, you do also want to always validate sources. Make sure that what it has told you is correct. Gotta find my rubber ducky. Honestly, yes. All these things that I'm saying, talk to your cat or dog or baby or whatever, significant other, that's just rubber ducking. Which is, if you haven't heard of that, that's where you essentially just sit down and talk to a rubber duck at your desk and explain what issue you're having or what you're trying to learn until it finally makes sense to you. That's what rubber ducking is.
yeah, we're just making the font bold and the text slightly large. Easy enough for me. All right, back to the browser. And there we go. Here's our director position. What do we have here? Job with an ID of 1. Here's number 2 for a programmer. 3 for a teacher. It all works. So now think about it. All you have to do is link to that specific page within your job listings view. So right here, let's make it.
Yep. So now that we have all those links working, like we just saw, I'm going to head back here and instead of hard coding these values, we can just link to the one that we want. Yeah, rubber ducky. He makes bath time so much fun. Yep. Sesame Street had some absolute bangers, I tell you what. Yep. There was a really great song. This is way off topic, but there was a really great song from classic Sesame Street called I forget was it Ray Charles who sang it. It's I it's called "I Don't Want to Live on the Moon," and I still think of that song like regularly. It was so beautiful. Yeah, beautiful song from Sesame Street.
Dynamic job ID.
Okay, so yeah, real quick there, he just made the link dynamic, so I'm going to go back to that so we can actually do it. So went from hard coding.
Right here, let's make it dynamic job ID.
Yeah, so to just say, all right, for each job that we're looping through, get the ID and pass that in to the route. So that way our route will know what page we're trying to go to. So we've not only made the display value dynamic, each of the links that are going to be generated, each of those anchor tags that are going to be generated are also going to be dynamic. So ID, there we go. And we're passing that in. Okay, let's try that real quick. So go back here, we'll go back to home, and we'll go to jobs. Now, each of these should be a link, and they are, we can see. And if I hover over them, you probably can't see that, but if I hover over them, the ID values for each one are 1, 2, and 3. That's what link is going to be passed through. So if I click programmer, yeah, it takes me to my programmer page. If I go back, click teacher, it takes me to the teacher page. So yeah, our dynamic link generation is working correctly. Cool.
Let's see if it works. So here's our jobs page. We don't have any styling yet, but notice they are clickable. So here's our director position. Let's go back. Here's our programmer position. And here is our teacher position. So yeah, the last thing I'm going to do is just add, I don't know, text blue, hover, underline for each of these.
I'm not going to worry
just to
about
make
that.
Not great, but just to make it a little more clear that these are clickable links. Maybe I should be a teacher. All right, this job pays $40,000. Here's all the details. Here's a form I can fill out to learn more. We are well on our way to creating a jobs board. All right. So, yeah, we're not actually going to build the real jobs board platform until the end of the course when you feel quite a bit more comfortable. But yeah, throughout the series, you're going to see little nuggets, little traces of concepts that we might use once we start building that thing officially. So, you're doing great work. This video went a little long, so no homework today. I will see you in day 7.
Okay, we are going to take a break because we are overdue for taking a break. So, yeah, we're going to take a break for 5 minutes. And then when we come back, we're going to move on to lesson 7. A lot of these concepts that we covered in this lesson 6 are probably going to be familiar to you if you've used literally any other framework, EJS, handlebars, if you've ever built an API before. Again, a lot of this stuff is not specific to Laravel, and that's what's so neat is because if you've done this before, the concept should already be clicking for you because so many of these concepts are interchangeable between frameworks, between philosophies, between languages even, right? You've built an API in JavaScript before? Awesome. You can figure out how to build one in Laravel as well, in PHP. So that's the cool part is that once you've learned one language, you can learn other languages so much easier. And that's what I love so much about this. So, all right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and do lesson 7, which is, I forget what it's about. Let's see what it's about. Yeah, it's about auto-loading namespaces and models. So if you're familiar with MVC framework, you probably know what a model is. But yeah, this covers some concepts that are maybe a little bit more unique to Laravel. So worth covering if you're getting into Laravel for the first time, and which we are, right? Okay, so we're going to cover that when we come back from our break. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in chat, and I will cover them as soon as we get back from break. Otherwise, we're going to take 5 minutes. Please get up and stretch if you're able to do so. Hydrate, have a snack, whatever you got to do. Let your dog out, and then come on back after 5 minutes. Alrighty, be right back. Okay, folks, we got about 30 seconds left in the break, so come on back if you're coming back. And as always, pet your dogs, pet your cats, pet your significant other with their permission, of course, and then come on back. Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. My animations are kind of glitching out a little bit, but that's okay. Yeah, welcome back, folks. I hope y'all had a good break. So just prior to the break, we essentially wrote out some dynamic logic to help us create, well, dynamic pages for each of those job links. So as many job listings as we have, we can generate as many unique job pages as we need. So because of the fact that we've created these layout components and we've created, ID values and everything, we've put all this stuff out so that it can be mixed and matched as much as we need. We can generate whatever the user wants to click on. Shad says, when doing tags, does too many slow the algorithm? I assume you're wondering. When you're talking about tags, Shad, are you talking about HTML tags? What type of tag are you talking about? Just so I can better answer your question. What type of tag are you? Sorry, what type of tag are you referencing there? Like these types of tags? While you're typing that up, we're gonna keep going, but please do. I want to answer your question, so please do type it out, and we'll see if I can answer your question. All right, let's go ahead and start on the next lesson here. This one is shorter, which is good, and yeah, about autoloading namespaces and models.
Okay, welcome to day 7. So I'm going to dive right in because we have a bunch to do here. I'm going to start within my routes file. And yeah, you'll remember in the last episode, temporarily, we duplicated the list of jobs. So I defined the array here, and then we did a copy paste down here as well. But yeah, clearly that doesn't scale at all. So we need to solve this problem. But I'm going to solve this problem in a very incremental way. And I'm going to do it in this way because I think it will help you better understand some of the concepts that we will discuss in the next episode. So just bear with me and come along for the ride. Okay, so if we're thinking incrementally, well, the first thing we could do is just push the array up one level. So I could select our list of jobs here, cut it, and then push it up one level.
Yeah, okay. So we're essentially just going to consolidate this logic a little bit. So instead of repeating jobs multiple times, we are going to reduce that duplication to some degree. Still not where we want to be with the end goal, but it's a start, right? So in here in my jobs, I'm just going to get rid of essentially everything. Let's see, I think I'm just going to grab this whole array here. Yeah, we'll do that for now.
Level, which in this case is just the routes file. So I could have a list of jobs like so. And then if we scroll down, we could.
Okay, so jobs, we're just going to essentially kind of redeclare the variable up here as a sort of a global variable. Do that. And then we can reference it in each of our functions.
Could use those jobs. So make that variable available within this closure here.
Yep, and if we want to be able to use it inside of our, kind of like he talked about before, if we want to be able to use a variable like this inside one of our functions, we need to make sure it's properly in scope. So function, and then I can say use, because I want to use this jobs variable, use jobs, and then we're going to return view jobs.
And then I can pass it in.
Yeah, and then instead of then listing out the entire array, I want to pass in our pre-declared variable here. Like that. So return view jobs, pass in this jobs array, essentially, as an array called jobs into our view.
Okay. Then I can do the exact same thing here. So get rid of it. And then once again, make that variable available in this.
Oh, yes, good catch. Yes, jobs. Good catch. I left off the S. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Frenetic. I missed that. Good one. All right, so drag this over just a titch. Oh, good. You all can see it. Perfect. So yeah, once again, instead of having to have this whole array declared up here more than once, we can get rid of it. Oops. Try to even this out a little bit. There we go. And then just say, all right, hey, use this array we already have. Use jobs. And everything else should be able to stay the same here.
Function. And yeah, we have now removed that duplication. Back to the browser.
Let's make sure everything works. Job listings are good. Yep, each of our individual pages, those are good. Cool. Okay, so we didn't break anything. We just kind of elevated it up one level, reducing that duplication.
Click a link, and yeah, everything works exactly in the way it did before, which is great. All right, let's keep going. Next, I'm going to wrap this within sort of a data container. So let's create a class called job, and I want to define a method that will fetch all of my jobs. And I just said the word all. Let's make that the method name. So I have a method called all, and I'm going to make it static. That's fine for now.
Okay, so here we're getting into some programming concepts that you might be less familiar with if you've only ever done JavaScript before. You can do, more traditional, like less function-based, more, object-based programming in JavaScript. You absolutely can. It's not something that we often do. We don't often declare, our own classes and methods in JavaScript if you're building your own little web applications and that type of thing. But in most programming languages, that's something that's fairly common. Setting up classes, creating your own methods in those classes. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to create a new class called job, and it should make some level of sense, even if you haven't really seen it before. We're essentially just creating a class. We're going to define various aspects of that class. And then we're also going to create some methods. So essentially it's just some custom functions based on this class that we can call whenever we want. We reference the class, we reference the method, and then that's a function we can call. So we can define our own, custom logic here. So in here, we're going to create a static function, define it, and we're going to call it all. It's essentially just going to be like a select all. Give me every job on the list.
And we will select all of these right here, this whole array, and bring it in like so. All right. And then
Yep. All right. So what this function is going to return is just the entire list of jobs. So we're just moving it, encapsulating it inside of a method. So if I call jobs.all, essentially, that's going to return jobs.
of course, I don't need to define the variable here. Okay, so yeah, it's just a container at this point. If I call job all, that's going to return this array to me. Okay, so now we can scroll down. We will no longer need use jobs, so I can get rid of that because now we have a class. And I can replace the variable names here, and I'll select both of these with our job class, : all.
Yep. So now instead of having to reference a variable, we can simply reference that custom method that we just defined. In Laravel, if you want to reference a method on a class, so like for example, if you were in JavaScript, you might say array.sort, right? But instead of the dot notation, we use double colons in PHP, Laravel. So like so, job : all allows us to call that method that we just defined. And I can get rid of the use down here as well. And again, call job all. And these should work as before.
All right, makes sense. We now have a class with a method called all that returns an array. And let's make that explicit by adding a return type. We can do that by adding a colon and then the type of the data that we're returning, in this case, an array. So we're just being explicit about what type of data is being returned.
And this is a little bit different too, right? If you've only ever done JavaScript before, JavaScript is really loosey-goosey when it comes to data types, as we all know, right? But if you've used something like TypeScript, then this is maybe a little bit more familiar, where you have this additional sort of insurance of saying, hey, look, if I call this method, if I call job.all, essentially, I am going to expect that it's going to return an array. That's what I'm going to get back. And so if something else happens, then I know that something is wrong, right? This is going to return an array. That's what we should expect from it.
From this method. Okay, so let's go back to the browser once again, give it a try, and everything works just as it did before.
Yeah, let's try that. Oops, hang on. Refresh. Yep, so jobs page still displays as before. Click on each one of these. Hooray, still works. Good deal. Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, let's keep going. Does it make sense to have a class named job inside of our routes file? No, it's not really where it goes. So why don't we instead place this within our app directory? But where do we put it? Well, I think we're going to use the models directory here. Okay. Now, let's take 30 seconds to quickly go over this because I think it's important. And by the way, that's why I'm doing a side camera view. It's that important, so listen up. Open your ears. Okay, model is a key term, and it comes from the MVC architecture. MVC stands for Model View Controller, and it's not unique to Laravel. Lots and lots of tools and frameworks adhere to it. It's just a system. It's a methodology for how to go about constructing applications and how each piece of the puzzle should and can communicate with each other. So Model View Controller, MVC. And as it turns out, you've already learned about views, right? It's the presentation layer. Controllers, we're going to talk about more, but what we're doing in that routes file where we define a route and then we have a function that handles that route, that's your controller, basically. But we'll get into that more in a couple episodes. So that leaves model. Now, I'm going to keep it very basic. Your model can represent your data persistence, but also the business logic tier of your application. So think about it. If you were building a jobs board platform, the concept of a job is really important, and it would have all of this behavior associated with it, right? What are the rules for creating a job? Can jobs be marked as open or available or filled? What happens when a job is filled? You know, there are all of these questions that you have to ask whenever you build an application. And then that doesn't even account for how do you store these jobs? Do you write them to a file? Are they being placed in a database? How do we remove a job? How do we archive a job? How do we delete a job? All of this stuff can be encapsulated under this umbrella of model. So, if we have a models directory and we have this job class, well, maybe the job class should go in the models directory. So let's do that now.
All right, so yeah, that was just a quick review of MVC, which again, if you are familiar with full stack development, you've probably heard MVC before. None of this is brand new. It's all just concepts that we're remixing in a new framework. So yeah, really all he was saying there is that we probably want to have our models in a model specific location. And again, models are kind of defining the structure of our business data, of the data we're passing into this application. And so, yeah, we're going to want to move this class to a specific location and then reference that in our routes. We're going to want to get it out of here and just make reference to it when we need it. Peak says, I wasn't a fan of strict types in PHP, but after building with them, I definitely find bugs much faster. Yeah, and that's kind of the benefit of like TypeScript, right? If you've been working with JavaScript, but then you start building applications for business, yeah, something like TypeScript is going to be helpful because you can kind of set some guardrails, right, around what's the data flowing in and out. Is it the correct type? Is it something different? What is happening in my application? And defining types definitely makes that easier. It's the same reason why I like SQL so much, given that SQL is type specific. And so you have to define each column with its own data type in a table. If you don't do that, you might end up writing, let's say, a string value into something that's meant to be a character, right? Or sorry, something that's meant to be a number, and then really screwing up your application. But with SQL, it's going to stop you if you try to do something you shouldn't, right? If I try to write a string value into a column that should be just 1, 2, 3, 4, well, there you go. It's going to stop you before you do something that's going to really wreck your data. And it's the same way in stuff like this. If you want a little bit more control, try to get type specific. It's a bit of a drag when you're building something, but oftentimes it's going to prevent bad things from happening later, or reduce the likelihood of bad things happening. Shad says, not sure when there will be a Q&A general, so don't want to interrupt the flow. My feed is frozen, so I want to ask, do we need to learn Symfony and PHP along with Laravel? Well, Laravel is PHP. PHP is Laravel. Laravel is a framework that sits on top of PHP. So you're learning PHP right now. So you don't need to learn them separately unless you want to, unless you have a reason to. Yeah. I wonder which to learn first, all at the same time. No rush in this question. Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, that's a good thing to say, Rex. It's like what Django is to Python. It sits on, or like what React is to JavaScript. It's a fancy hat in a costume that sits on top of JavaScript, right? That's what React is. And Laravel is it's a fancy costume for PHP. And I would say, don't learn this stuff unless you kind of have a reason to. You might, at this point, Shad, you might not have a reason to learn Laravel. In that case, I would probably stick with just building stuff in JavaScript, getting more comfortable with building applications, that type of thing. You don't have to learn any of this. I would also just always caution against, when you're early on, when you're first starting out, I would caution against getting too fragmented in your learning, right? Try to pick one path and stick with it. If that means that, you don't watch these streams, that's fine. That's all good. It's whatever is best for you, right? What are you learning right now? Stick with that to the end and then go on to something different. If you're learning JavaScript right now, stick with JavaScript until you can confidently build stuff with it and then branch out a little bit. I always recommend learning React after learning JavaScript, and I have a full series on React on my YouTube channel. So there you go.
If I open up models, you'll see we already have a user class, and we will learn about that more a little later. So let's.
All right, so real quick, looking inside of this folder here, going into models. Let's see, where is it at? Oh, there it is. Yeah, models. So app models. And yes, we do have a model in here already, which we're not going to worry about right now. We're going to create a new model in here, and we're going to call it, let's see, I don't remember what he calls it exactly, but Peak says, Laravel was easier to learn than Symfony, at least for me, but once I learned it, it made Symfony much easier to get. Okay, yeah, that's good to know. But again, I would say don't learn any of this stuff unless you have a reason to right now, especially if you're in the middle of learning something else. Otherwise, you're going to get too overloaded and you're going to, give up. It's what happens.
Let's create a class here, and I'll call it job. And you'll see.
All right, so under models, I'm just going to create a new file here. We're going to call it job. And notice how we're capitalizing it here, just indicating that it's a model. And my, VS Code isn't going to auto create that little framework for me. This little sort of code skeleton. We'll have to create that, but that's okay.
See, my editor populates the class, but I'm going to remove that so that I can copy over the one that we've already created. So I grab that and move it over.
All right, we're going to grab the class. I'm going to go ahead and cut it here. We won't need that anymore on that page. And put it back into models. Yeah, absolutely. Got to stay focused, right? That's hard. There's a lot of cool stuff out there to learn, but you got to stay focused. All right, and I'm going to also add the namespace up here because it didn't put it in for me. So app models, go. Save that.
Okay. Now, if I scroll up real quick.
Oh yeah, and I also need, it didn't define the PHP variable either. You'll notice that everything in the file here is white. It's not, doesn't have the dynamic highlighting because I didn't declare my little PHP tag up here. So got to do that. PHP, boop, there we go. Then that highlighted everything.
I want you to notice that we have a namespace of app models. And notice how that correlates to the directory structure here, app models. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you understand what a namespace is, but if not, the 5-second explanation is it's a way to organize your code, right? As you can imagine, the class name job is not that unique. So for example, if I look in the entire project and framework for job, right at the top, I see 3 different files that have the name job. One of them refers to a queued job, one of them refers to an interface, and one of them is our job model. So as you can imagine, without some kind of organizational structure in place, you have collisions. Just like 20 years ago when you were organizing your downloaded music. You didn't put everything within a top-level folder, right? Instead, you grouped it according to the artist. So all Jamiroquai songs went in a Jamiroquai directory. All ZZ Top songs went in a ZZ Top directory. It was a way of grouping things to avoid potential collisions, and also just to make things easier to reason about. Okay, so all you need to know right now is Laravel conforms to an autoloading standard called PSR4, and that is defined within your composer.json file. And yeah, if I scroll down, you'll see it right here, autoload PSR4. And if this is all just gibberish and you're like, I have no idea what I'm looking at, that's okay. Just come along. PSR4 is a convention and a standard for autoloading files. And we can define our mapping, so to speak, right here. And Laravel does this for you automatically. So Laravel is saying right here, I want an app namespace, and I want that root to be located at this path. Okay? So the app namespace is located at this path. From that point onward, any directories you create are sort of like creating a new folder when organizing your music. So notice how user follows that. App models is the namespace. If we go anywhere else, how about HTTP controllers controller? Then it will follow that namespace. App HTTP controllers. And when we do this, we now have enough sophistication to automatically import these files without having to traditionally require them, like you might have done 15 years ago with PHP. Okay, so all of that to explain, when I come back to my routes file, all I have to do here is use it, and it's instantly available to me. I can say,
yeah, so kind of to get to the cut to the chase there a little bit, essentially, if you, what Laravel is helping us do here is define the location of each of these models so that when we need them, we can just reference them and pull them in automatically. So we can just say, all right, if it has this namespace of app/models, then if I want to use it in, if I want to make reference to it, I can just call use here and define that path.
use app models job.
There we go. Yeah. So I can say use and essentially just state the specific route to get to that location. So app, models, and job. Oops. There we go.
Just like that. Okay. Back to the browser, click a link, and yeah,
So now, since I have defined my job class in a separate file, like so, I should be able to reference it. I got a semicolon there. I should be able to reference it directly from my routes folder just by calling the location, saying, hey, you can look in here and you can find this class called job, and then you can reference the methods on that class. It's just telling it where to find this information. So let's see if that works. Yep, so I was able to reload it, and that works. Reload it, yep. So even though my job model now lives in a completely separate location, I can still reference it effectively by essentially importing it, which is something that I'm sure you've also done in other frameworks like React. It's something that's very common.
Everything works again just as it did before, which is a good thing because now we're getting a little bit more comfortable. We've learned about views. Now we're dipping our toes into this idea of models and extracting data into its own class to which we can then apply behavior and logic to. So, for example, what about right here? This section where we have a route that listens for a specific URI to view a single job. When we do, we fetch all of the jobs, and then we have this array class that Laravel provides that finds the first job that matches the ID from the URI or the URL. So this kind of behavior could go in the job class, couldn't it? Let's give it a shot. I'm going to select this whole thing here.
Okay, so yeah, now again, we're going to do a little bit more abstraction. We're going to take out this essentially checker to get all the job details from an ID, and we're going to turn it into a method. So we'll take it out, and we're going to turn it into a method on that class that we just defined. Hey, Icon, good to see ya. They say, Laravel, say it ain't so. Hey, our good friend of the stream, Leah T Codes, they just got a job working for Laravel as a DevOps person. So I'm going to say, yay, Laravel, because it gave my friend Leah a good job that she's super excited about. So yay, Laravel. Yay for Leah. Buckies, welcome to the stream. Hello. They say, is it still worth it to learn coding? I stopped because of the AI hype. Okay, I love this, Buckies. Please stick around for just a second. If you can hang around for just a couple minutes, I want to finish this lesson and then I want to talk about your question, okay? I do want to answer your question because it's a very important one. So if you can stick around for just a minute, I want to talk about that.
And I will command click on job, which will take me directly to the file. And let's add a new method here. Once again, it'll be static, and I'm going to call this find because I want to find a specific job with the given ID. And that ID should be an integer. All right, and then I will paste in that code. Okay, so ultimately
Okay, so just creating a new method here. I'm just catching up, passing in an ID value into that, and then so we can do the find, and then paste in that logic.
will return an array. So let's import this class,
But yeah, Icon, yeah, the short answer, correct. The short answer to Bucky's question is yes, you should still learn coding, but I want to talk about the why. Definitely. But yeah, that's the right answer is yes. Short answer is yes, you shouldn't give up just because AI says, it's going to take over the world. Not true. There are still plenty of reasons to learn and reasons why AI will not replace you as a developer.
Eliminate support array. And then I will add the return type to make it clear that we expect an array to be returned here. Okay, so now notice job all. Well, we're already within this job class, aren't we? So why don't we just say static all, and that would be fine.
Yeah, so what he's doing here is essentially instead of doing this call to the class that we're already inside the job class. This is a method in the job class. So instead of calling job again, we can use the keyword static, which should look familiar to something that you might have done in JavaScript at one point. If I were inside of a JavaScript class and I wanted to make reference to the parent, what keyword would I use in JavaScript to do that? There's a keyword in JavaScript that essentially does the same thing. If I want to go up one level inside of a class in JavaScript, what would I do? What keyword would I use? I want to refer, if I'm working in a method inside of a class, I want to refer to, let's say, another method inside that class in JavaScript. What keyword do I use? This is a bit of a hard question because it's probably not one you've used a whole bunch, but it is an important one. Ooh, super. That's a good guess, Coco. Ooh, I like these. Great guesses all around. But yeah, I think the closest equivalent would be the this keyword. in JavaScript. So in JavaScript, it'd be something like this dot all. Yeah, you would use this dot and then whatever to refer to the parent. But yeah, in PHP, it's going to be static whatever, but in JavaScript, it'd be this. Which, again, probably not something you've used a whole bunch, but good to know. One of those little vocab things, right, that could come up in an interview. Okay. So we're returning, we're calling, we're getting the entire, oh, peak, that's good to know. In PHP, it's also this, but only for instantiated classes. Okay, so this is static, so we're using static, but gotcha. Good to know, peak. Thank you for that. Yeah, so this keyword, again, more vocabulary that carries over, right? PHP has this, JavaScript has this, all this stuff starts to blend together, doesn't it? A little bit. Once you've learned one language, you can learn another one. Okay, just checking this, make sure I didn't miss anything stupid here. Cool. So what we're doing here is we're just saying, all right, if somebody calls this find method, take the entire list of jobs and then just do that match on the ID value.
Fine. And now we've taken some relatively confusing code and we've isolated it behind a simple method that makes it very clear what it does. Oh, this code finds a job with the given ID. Okay, so now check this out. We'll go back to our routes file and I can get rid of this confusing logic and just replace it with job equals job find by the given ID. Notice how much that cleans things up too. All right, let's test our work.
Okay, so yep, again, we're just going to call that method we just defined, job, and call our find method by, and then just pass in the ID value. By ID. There we go. Okay, let's make sure it still works. Again, this is just iteration, right? We're just slowly abstracting this job find logic a little bit farther and farther away from the routes themselves. We're just pulling it back a little bit more by each time and making sure it still works. Oh goodness, thank you so much, Jzord24. Thank you for the follow. Good to have you here. Okay, so I have an error. That's okay. App models error not fit. Oh, okay. So let's go over here. I might have to actually do the import on this one. Let's see if I can do it. I figured out a way to do the import without having to type it out myself, but that's okay. We can grab it. I'm actually going to grab it from my other version of this. Give me just 1 second. There we go. Grab that. And drop it in. Okay. And let's try it again. There we go. Now it works. Yeah, so I just need to do the import there. And try this one. That works. Yep. So each time we try it, it still works. No matter, as we continue to kind of abstract this information farther and farther away, we can still make it work. And that's kind of, you know, fundamentals of API building here.
Okay, so back to the browser. Give it a refresh. Click link. It still works the way it did before, but now it's even better. And that's cool. And I think this is really cool, actually. So now, remember in the last episode, we touched on this idea of the happy path. And the happy path is if everything went according to plan, this is how it works. So what about if it didn't go according to plan? For example, what if the user tries to visit a job with an ID that we don't have in our system, like 20? Well, right now we get an error, right? So for the job class, when we used the find method, we expected the returned value to be an array, but null was returned because there was no matching item here. So this makes sense, but also real quick, we should talk about return types. If I come back to the job class, if you did not add this return type, and types in general are optional in PHP, but if we did not add this, your error message will be different from mine because it will be caught at a different point in the script's execution. So have a look. If I remove it, come back and refresh, it still doesn't work because within the view, we're trying to interact with it as if it were an array, but it's not. It's null. So it still fails, but it fails at a different point. And whether you enjoy types or not, and believe me, there are world wars when it comes to topics like this. Just know that one of the benefits is it will pick up on potential issues earlier in the script's execution, and generally that's a good thing. Okay. Anyways, come back, give it a refresh, and now we know. Okay, well, we have to handle the situation where we're trying to find a job, but one wasn't available, and we have to handle that in a specific way. All right, let's do that now. So we're going to try to find the matching job. However, in certain situations, job could be null. So why don't we just check for that? So if is null, or I could just write if not job, and that will effectively do the same thing, then we should probably abort and display a 404 page. 404 stands for not found. It's a browser status code, and it's exactly what we want in this case. You're trying to access this page, but we don't have anything to show you. Sorry, 404 not found. So with Laravel, we have a helper function called abort, and we can include a status code as the first argument here. And by the way, one thing that I really love about Laravel is how all we have to do is call this abort function, and it will then bubble up in our system to the point that Laravel will catch it and understand what to do. So, we have a 404 exception here. I'm going to translate that into the appropriate response, and you don't have to do anything to make that work. Have a look here. If I switch back to the browser and we refresh, notice that this time.
Yeah. So essentially, it's kind of like a try catch, right? We're just making sure they can handle failures gracefully. So if I do jobs, /1000 here, there we go. I get a lovely 404 not found page. It aborts as expected. And that works because we have already sort of told our model that, hey, the type that comes out of this should be an array. So if you get a null back, if it's a job that doesn't exist, then display the 404 page. So if there's no job data returned, abort and throw a 404. So that way, instead of that nasty error page, you get a nice, clean, moderately understandable 404 not found page.
We do get a 404 not found page. All right, so I think that about does it for day 7. Real quick, we're no longer using this class, so I can remove the import. And I think we're in pretty good shape here. So notice we've cleaned up the routes file considerably. We've learned about models, and we've created our first model. We've learned a bit more about data encapsulation and behavior and how to handle the sad paths or the unexpected paths. You've learned about custom status codes and how they are converted into responses automatically by Laravel. We really covered quite a bit for day 7. So no homework for today. Keep playing around with this, get comfortable, and then I think you're ready for day 8. I'll see you then.
Okay, yeah. So as I thought, the next topic we're going to get into is the databases, which, like I mentioned, I'm pretty excited about because it is kind of cool how Laravel deals with databases. But I want to come back to Bucky's question. So, first time chatter, welcome to the stream, Bucky's. They mentioned, is it worth it to learn? Is it still worth it to learn coding? I stopped because of the AI hype. Yeah, and I think the keyword that you used in your question there is really important. Hype. Right? What is hype? Hype is generally something that inflates excitement about a topic to a level beyond what is true, right? It is above the level of facts. It's something, it's speculation, it's excitement above the level of facts. That's literally what hype is. It's, wow, this is going to replace everything, and then the reality is somewhere below that, right? And so chat, I'm going to kind of outsource this to you guys a little bit. What are some of the reasons why AI might not replace you as a developer? Especially if you're already like an experienced coder, what are some of the reasons why you are cautious of AI? But don't worry, we're going to talk about both sides of this. We're also going to talk about why we like AI. But I want to start with the caution first. I want to start with the cons to these tools. So, chat, I'm outsourcing to you here. What are the reasons why you might be cautious when using AI to either generate code for you or to be a coding partner? A real cool cat says insecure code. Yeah, so by that, I'm assuming you mean code that might not fit the security standards for what you're actually trying to build. Starboy says people don't know the context of the code. Um, I'm assuming by that you mean like AI is just going to generate boilerplate code without necessarily knowing the big picture. Peak, yeah, that's a great one there. It says when AI builds something, even if it works, it can introduce impossible to find bugs until it blows up down the line. Yeah, because you didn't write it or anybody on your team didn't write it, you might not fully grasp what the AI, was going for when it built it because it can't even explain what it does, right? AI doesn't understand why it does anything. AI just follows a chain of logic until it outputs something that fits the parameters of probability in its model. It doesn't know why it does anything. It's just like, hey, this goes with this, so I'm gonna, it's just a logic chain, a chain of causality. And Bridge says it can't fully understand user requirements. Yeah, that's a big one too. It's sort of going back to that big picture thing, right? AI can't talk to all of your customers. It can't, to understand the business requirements. It can't understand your organizational structure. It can't know all of your standards and practices. It can't know all of that sort of cultural knowledge that comes from just working on a dev team. It doesn't understand any of that. It's just going to, again, it's just going to generate what it thinks matches its logical parameters for the model, which might technically work, but it's not going to be good code. It's not going to be code that takes into account everything that your customers have said in their requirements meeting. It can't. Yeah, and I think that's a big thing that people overlook is they're like, there's this whole trend now of vibe coding. Have y'all heard of vibe coding? I'm just curious. Just a quick poll in chat. Have y'all heard of vibe coding? There's actually an article on it recently in the New York Times. Bridge says, yeah. Some people have heard of it, some people haven't. But yeah, essentially, yeah, right. Essentially, yeah, and vibe coding can be fun. Essentially, what vibe coding is it is where you just go to ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever with an idea. You're just like, man, I want to build a little app that's going to help organize my kids' school schedules. Like, I just want a little app. It's just going to display on a little, like, maybe you got like an old monitor, like, little tablet or something. You're just like, I just want to hang up this tablet like in my kitchen and just have it display my kids' school schedules. And then anytime, they make a change to like their Google Calendar or whatever, I just want it to show up on this little tablet. I just want a custom little app for my personal use. I don't want to like subscribe to a freaking, calendar service or whatever. I just want to build it myself. And so you come to GPT with an app, an idea. And you just work with GPT and you just code it out. You might not know all the, frameworks or whatever that you need in order to build this application, but you just keep talking with ChatGPT until something finally works and you end up with an app. And that's vibe coding. You're just coding off of vibes. And that's fun. That's fine. That's great. But the problem is when you try to translate that into a business. You try to translate that into something with a user base where users are supplying credentials and bank information or if you try to pass that code off to your employer, right? It's not going to fly. It's just not going to be good enough. It's not going to be secure enough. It's not going to take into account all the requirements of the project. And it doesn't, ChatGPT or other models, just they do not understand the big picture, how humans interact and how that translates into code. The human element is what is missing from all these models. They don't understand the social interactions, the societal interactions, the cultural things that go into a piece of code. I think, actually, and honestly, I think a lot of tech bros don't understand that either, which is why the models behave the way they do. Anyway, and I think then the greatest point there is what D-Rock said, which is why I wanted to say it last. They say AI is wrong all the time. It took me 5 minutes to prompt AI to swap two elements of an array properly. Yeah, sometimes it's just dead wrong. It's going to use older versions of frameworks that don't work properly anymore, because that's the largest part of the model. It has the most data of that from that framework, that older framework. So it's going to use that. It's going to confidently tell you stuff that is flagrantly incorrect. Just because maybe it mixes up two things that have similar names. That happens a lot. Two things have the same name. It's going to mix them up and tell you that they're the same thing. Not true, right? But that's what it's going to tell you. So those are some of the problems with UI, why AI cannot replace developers. Now, does that mean we should all, get out our pitchforks and smash ChatGPT servers? No, there's a absolute use case for using AI as a tool to help you code, not to replace you, but to augment you, to make you faster. It's just like Microsoft Excel, right? Think about life for accountants before Microsoft Excel, or life for data analysts before Microsoft Excel. You're out there, you're having to like hand type spreadsheets and, do all these manual, use a calculator at your desk, right? Any accountant that you go to now, or data analyst that you go to now, they don't have a calculator at their desk because they're going to dump it into Excel and crank out, 10,000 formulas in 30 seconds. That didn't replace them. Excel didn't replace them. It didn't replace their knowledge and their abilities. It just augmented them and made them better. That's what AI should be for us as coders. It should help make us faster, but we should have the knowledge to govern our use of AI and govern the results that it gives us. Right, as Peak said, I like using AI for coding by explaining what I want to do and sharing my plan. If it suggests a better one, great, but that's rare. When it gives a bad idea, thinking through the flaws sharpens my own skills. Yeah, absolutely. If you have the base knowledge to know when ChatGPT is wrong, I already know JavaScript. I am confident I can build a web app from scratch by myself in JavaScript with Node, Express, all that stuff. And so if I want to use GPT to generate some boilerplate code for me so I don't have to type it out, fantastic. I'm going to do that. But I'm also going to read through the code after it gets generated, and I'm going to point out the flaws. I'm going to be like, oh, okay, that's wrong. I want to swap that out. That's not great. And, and I could tweak the model. I could then say to ChatGPT, hey, don't use this anymore. It's outdated. Use this instead. For all future for all future code generations, use this instead. So you can refine it. You can make it better. But again, that comes from a place of experience on my part, that I know what's wrong, that I know I'm not just trusting what it gives me. Dylan says, the functional staff I work with on projects would riot if they had to interface with AI instead of a human dev. It's like the frustration of call center robots. I just want to talk to a human. Yeah, 100%. Again, it's this human element that's missing from this big AI push. The secret that humans, especially like humans without a strong technical background, they don't want to interact with API. They want to talk to a person. They want to spitball. They want to they want to go back and forth with someone who's going to understand where they're coming from and work with them, walk with them to find a solution. And it's exactly the same way at my job too. So much of what we do is not writing code. I'm on a dev team, and most of my time is spent meeting about stuff, meeting about requirements, building specifications, debating, hunting for errors, just scaffolding out projects. So much of it is not the coding part. I spend a minority of my time writing fresh code. A lot of it is, okay, can we repurpose this? Can I just, can we add this into an existing thing? Do we need this data at all? Maybe we don't even need this. Maybe you're just reading, the data that you have. Maybe you just don't understand it. Let's look through it and see if we can figure this out from what you already have. So much of it is that, the negotiation, the back and forth with the customer. I'm still a dev. I still write code, but a large portion of what I do is those softer skills. Peak says, what you say is true, but other humans can confidently tell you something that is wrong as well. Absolutely. They 100% can. And that's the trick, right? Is that if another human tells me confidently that something is wrong, I'm still going to be more likely to fact check them. For some reason, people tend to have very blind faith in AI as like the ultimate professor or the ultimate teacher. Whereas if another human tells me something and I'm like, I don't know about that, that might be wrong, I'm going to turn around and Google it or look it up in docs or whatever. I'm going to be like, are you sure? I don't know about that. Can we look this up together? And then we're going to double check it, right? Whereas a lot of people don't do that with AI, which is the problem. But again, as we're talking about the benefits, the positives, AI can generate boilerplate code, like basic stuff, super fast. It can help me troubleshoot SQL queries. I do that a lot. Like if I have a SQL query that like should be working and it's like 99% correct, but I'm missing a comma somewhere, I'm just like, man, I don't have time for this. I just dump it into ChatGPT and ChatGPT tells me exactly where the comma is. Or if I'm like, man, I could probably consolidate this query a little bit, make it a little more streamlined. It already does what I want. So I already know what the result should be. I just want to make it a little cleaner. Then I'll be like, ChatGPT, format this. Or ChatGPT, make this cleaner, clean this up. And it'll do it. And that's great. But I already know what the outcome should be. So I know what result I'm expecting. And if the query I get back gives me a different result, I'm going to dump it. I'm going to go with my original query. And yeah, another benefit too, as D-Rock said, they say, I find AI way more helpful for learning code instead of just endless Google searches. Yeah, to a degree, right? Again, AI can paraphrase things wrong. It can tell you things wrong. I would always suggest asking the model for its sources, if it will give you those sources, and then go and double check that information. Make sure it's right. Don't ever use AI as a single source of truth, would be my recommendation. But yeah, AI is a wonderful sidekick for coding. It can help you do autocompletes. It can help you with syntax and formatting and troubleshooting. If there's some documentation you're reading and it's like just really dense and hard to understand, which happens a lot, you can be like, hey, ChatGPT, can you explain this a different way so I can understand it? And yeah, that can help too. So there are benefits, but again, it is a tool. It is not a replacement. No matter what tech bros try to tell you, it will not replace you as a functional programmer. It will just, once things kind of even out a little bit, we're in the hype roller coaster. I think the hype roller coaster is going down right now. It is finished going up. It is going back down. We're understanding the limitations of what we have. We're sort of hitting a plateau in terms of advancements, I think. We'll reach a point of equilibrium, just like we do with every other new technology, like we did with computers, right? Computers haven't, replaced us. They've just given the opportunity for more jobs and more work. Computers, Microsoft Excel, all these wonder tools that now just become tools to help humans do their jobs. I know that was kind of a long tangent, but I really wanted to talk about it because this is really important. We try to talk about it fairly often just because I don't want people to get discouraged from learning to code, or from continuing to code because they think that, this is just going to be out the door. And one thing that I really like that Leon says a lot is, okay, theoretically, let's say that AI was going to replace you. Let's say that the singularity is coming. We're all going to get, kicked out of our jobs. Okay, well, you're still better off if you understand how to code and to effectively use these AI tools than you would be if you just were like, nope, I give up, I'm done, I don't understand how it works. Then, you're still going to have those soft skills. That's exactly what I was going to say, Pete. That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, you still have the skills that you learned while learning how to code. Skills like troubleshooting, skills like being able to communicate complex topics in a simple way, talking to customers about your code, talking to interviewers about your code, troubleshooting, ability to communicate, patience, ability to learn new complex topics. All those things are going to benefit you even if AI were to somehow put a stranglehold on the industry. So all these things are for your benefit, even if theoretically AI were to took your job, So yeah, still important, still valuable to know. Good question though. I like it. I like it when that question comes up and we have some time, we can really kind of dig into it because it's an important one. It's a common fear that a lot of people have. But I think, and this isn't a knock against you, Buckies, at all, but I think a lot of the times the people who ask that question have probably never worked like on a dev team in like a corporate environment, just because they don't know that there's so much more that goes into being a developer than just writing code. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Ahmed. They say, I think that in every era of human evolution, the people who adapt always win. Right. Yep. The best thing we can do is adapt to the situation as much as we can and, hopefully come out on top. Now, will the job landscape change? It already is, right? We're seeing that. We're seeing the industry have this sort of reflexive contraction. Be like, oh, we can replace everybody with AI. We don't need to hire any new devs. I think now we're starting to see that loosen up as companies realize, oh crap, wait, actually, we need somebody who actually knows our code base. Um, we need people who actually, can write fresh code and take context and understand our culture and talk to our customers. Wait, hang on. We shouldn't have fired that many people. And I think, we're starting to see that loosen up a little bit. Is it going to go back to what it was before, like the free for all of, 2020 and 2021? Probably not. But is it going to relax to a point where it'll be easier to get a job? Probably yes. Now, the now the whole implosion of the United States government throws a little monkey wrench into things, but that's regardless of the point. AI is still a separate thing, and that phenomena will still continue, I believe, in terms of this relaxation of the reliance on AI. Jim Harari says, AI is created by humans. I believe that AI is a support for programmers, something you as a programmer can modify or have it rewritten if something is made by AI that was not intended. Really replace us? I don't think yet. Yeah, and that's kind of a summary of my thoughts as well, Jim Harari. And that's a good stance to have, in my opinion. Yep. Yeah, that's a good stance to have, being aware of the limitations, but not being afraid to use it. Peak says, replace Doge with AI. Can't do much worse. Oh, God, yeah. Hey, Dead Egos. Hello. Welcome. Hey, Quad Shot. They say, yeah, I didn't miss you. Yeah, we've been good to see you, Quad Shot. We've been going for the past 2.5 hours or so. We just did a couple more Laravel lessons. Yeah, and we just took a little bit of a pause here to talk for a minute because we had a new viewer to the stream who said they were discouraged from coding or they stopped coding because of all the hype around AI, and so we just took a few minutes to go over the. No, you're good, Quadshot. We just took a few minutes to go over the cons and the pros of using AI as a coding resource, and also why it won't replace developers. It's a good conversation to have. Something we should do fairly often. Review that. But no, you're good, Quadshot. Good to see you as always. Yeah, we spent some time there. And basically, the summary is that, yeah, AI is not going to replace developers. It is a valuable tool. We should learn how to use it. We should gain base knowledge ourselves so that we can determine when AI is not behaving the way we want it to. We should be prepared to double check its work with our own knowledge. And we should understand that, the job market goes in peaks and cycles. And the same thing happened when computers were introduced and like when Microsoft Excel was introduced. But in the end, all these things just become tools for humans to use. Ooh, I like that, Dead Egos. That's a great way to put it. They say, I just wrote a post in my blog sort of about this. One of the biggest issues in software is the intent of the developer. Yes. That's something I was kind of trying to say before with like the big picture, but like, yeah, intent. AI cannot understand purpose or intent. It can only give content, right? It doesn't understand intent, only content. We glorify the golden hammer. Yeah, absolutely. Dead, if you want to share the link to that blog post, that would be a good sort of capstone to this discussion. If you want to, it's up to you. You don't have to, but that sounds like a good sort of, tangent for this discussion or a segue for this discussion. If people want to follow up with some more thoughts on this topic. Yep. As long as there are computers, there'll be people needed to tell them what to do. Not worried at all. Yeah. I mean, heck, even the computer in Star Trek, the super advanced starship computer in Star Trek still needs people to tell it what to do. I even like the blog title, Dead. They say the post is titled, "The best camera is the one you got." Yep. Oh man. Team human. Yes. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dead Egos. I'll just take a quick peek there. Yeah, and honestly, yeah. Sagama says, don't buy YouTube hype. Don't buy YouTube hype for anything. Don't buy YouTube hype for anything. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, this is a lovely little short post. Um, give it a read if you like. Yeah, of course, Dead. And that was just a really perfect kind of synergy there of what we were just talking about and what you just written about. So yeah, give their blog a check out. Okay. So the next topic that we're going to have here in our Laravel learning journey is we're going to start a section on databases and database migrations. Again, I think the way Laravel works with databases is pretty cool. We're probably not going to start on this because again, it's like a whole. I'm gonna pull up the episode list here. We're going to start this section on Eloquent, which is kind of the ORM or sort of database manager for Laravel. And I kind of want to, do this as a big chunk. So we'll probably do this next week. We'll probably start on the next lesson next week, and just kind of keep it as a bundle. But yeah, so we kind of started on the free for all discussion already. So we'll probably wrap up a little bit early. And yeah, but if there's anything else y'all want to talk about, feel free. Let's bring it up. Let's go. We've got more time than usual for our little free for all discussion. So if there's anything you'd like to ask me or any topics we'd like to cover, anything from how do I be good in job interviews? How do I learn better? How do I, I struggle from learning stuff with tutorials. How do I learn better? What's it like working as a dev? Anything else you want to ask about, now's the time. Yeah, absolutely, Dead. We're going to absolutely talk about that more next week in terms of, working, how do we structure database changes in Laravel, that type of thing. 100%. Yeah, and Dead, I don't think you were here when I was talking about it before. So in my day job, I am a SQL developer. So I'm actually a data engineer. I work with SQL. I work with ETL pipelines. So my default for any database interaction is always just going to be pure SQL. That's just how I operate. But it has been interesting to learn about the Laravel or ORM and kind of how it does stuff and how it's different from what I know. I've definitely had my frustrations with it, just because there are times when it's like, man, I just want to write a friggin' SQL statement, man. Like, why are you making me do this? But there, it is used. I can see the usefulness of it too for sort of mass database changes and things. Yeah. Sagama says, would y'all still recommend those who are into web dev stay with JavaScript instead of PHP? Yeah. So what I would say is whatever stack you started with, you're probably safe to stick with either one of those. They are both widely used. The frameworks that sit on top of them are both widely used. With JavaScript, you've got React, you got Vue, you got, friggin' Astro, all these things. And then with PHP, you've got Laravel, and others. And so, I don't think you're really going to go wrong either way. I don't remember where you're at in your web dev journey, Sigama. But I would say, yeah, if you started with JavaScript, it's probably safe to stick there. I'm just learning PHP and Laravel because, I had a job opportunity. So it depends on where you're going with your career too. If you're like, all the job postings in my area say PHP. PHP is a requirement in my area or at my current employer. If I want to move up, then heck yeah, switch over, learn PHP, do it. But if you don't really have a reason to switch, I would stick with your current stack and just get better at building stuff. And that's kind of goes into the next question here too from Peak. They say, Maya, you seem to have a lot of varying interests. Do you have strategy on keeping focused instead of hopping around to the next shiny new thing? Yeah. And I would say I do have a lot of Sagama said you just want to build websites, Sagama, then stick with JavaScript. You're fine. You're good. Stay there. That's all you need. You got it. Learn React if you want to build better websites, but just JavaScript is fine. But yeah, so peaks, in answer to peak your question about varying interests. Um, yeah, so keeping focus. There's nothing wrong with continuing your learning journey, and let's say you start with JavaScript and then you go to React. But I think the important thing is to solidify your understanding before going on to the next thing. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't do, is they'll watch a tutorial on React, say. They'll watch a tutorial on React and they'll be like, okay, I know React now. I'm going to learn something else. Bye, next thing. And what you got to do is you got to solidify that knowledge. You got to challenge yourself to apply that knowledge. You got to repetition and application. You got to do both of those tenets multiple times before you go on to the next thing. You'll notice in the React series that we did like last year on YouTube on my channel, I learned React from start to finish, from scratch. But I didn't just go on to the next thing after I finished all the lessons. What did I do? I turned around and I built several projects, multiple projects. I built multiple projects with React from scratch. And then, yeah, I went back to JavaScript, but I kept going back and building more stuff in React in the future. I kind of alternated for a while, like back and forth, JavaScript, React, because I was solidifying that knowledge. I was repeating it. I was applying it. And so now, yeah, I could sit down and I could build something in React right now because that knowledge is in my head. It's in my long-term storage. And so there's nothing wrong with having varied interests. But the problem that a lot of people have is getting excited and moving too quickly. If you commit to learning something new, you have to commit. You have to commit the time and the energy to fully embed that knowledge in your brain. And you have to say, I am going to learn this and absorb it and understand it and apply it before I will allow myself to go on to something new. So to summarize that a little bit, go through the lessons of whatever you're trying to learn, whether it's a book, docs, whatever, I don't care. And then build something fresh. Build something that is yours. Build a project from start to finish using the knowledge you've just learned. If you can't do it, go back and review what you need to know until you can. And once you've built one project, then build something different. Test yourself again. Do I really understand this? Do I understand what I did? Build something new until the concepts start to come naturally to you, until it starts to feel like a language, like something that you can just say and make it happen. And then, only then, can you go on to the next thing. And then you should circle back occasionally and reapply what you learned previously so it doesn't, leave your brain, right? So yeah, it's a commitment. You got to commit. As a personal example, right? I've learned React. I've learned here on stream. I've learned JavaScript, HTML, CSS, React, Python. Now we're learning Laravel. Occasionally, I circle back and we build something in one of those frameworks with one of those languages. I'm using Python at work now. Like I just keep reapplying these topics so I don't lose them. All right, catching with chat here. Quadshot says, what's the difference between data analysis and data engineer? And is analyst a good path to engineering? Oh, I love this question. I'm glad you're interested. Yeah, so it's about who produces the data and who consumes it in general. So data analysts are generally consumers of the data. They take data that has already been, like data structures that have already been created for them. Like they're going to query existing tables. They're going to query, existing data repositories, data warehouses, whatever, data that already is there. And then they're going to transform that and do analysis on it. They're going to draw insights from that data. They're going to say, okay, we have, 2 years worth of data on car sales from 16 different dealers. I'm going to do a presentation to the executives to determine which dealerships get the most budget for advertising. They're going to draw those insights from that data. Data engineers are going to be the ones piping in the data from those 16 different car dealers and turning it into a single table or into a multi-table format in the data warehouse. They're going to be ingesting that data from the sources, transforming it so it makes sense, and then making it available in the data warehouse for those data analysts to then, make use of, right? So they're going to be supplying the data. Data engineers are supplying the data and cleaning the data often. Analysts are then consuming that data. I started out, and if you asked if is analyst a good path to engineering, yes, that's I started. I was a data analyst for years. Yep. I started out, and it gives you a great understanding of database structures. It gives you a good understanding of, because you're kind of like dev adjacent. You might have to write some Python. You're getting familiar with coding, and then engineers are then the ones who are really getting in there, building those structures, building those pipelines, doing more coding. So it's a good path, I would say. I mean, it's a path that I followed. It's a path that my friend Marcia followed. So yeah, I think it's a good path. Rex says advice on projects and what to write if I want to enrich my portfolio. Build projects that are relevant to you, that you get excited about. Don't build a to-do list or calculator. Build a thing that helps, if you like, let's say you like classic car shows, build a thing that helps track which classic car makes and models you've seen at a car show, right? That's something that's going to be fun to talk about in an interview. So make things that are unique and fun to you, even if it's just a to-do list under the hood. Doesn't have to be fancy, just has to be interesting. So, for example, I'll give an example. The project that I built live here on stream, the Graveyard app, so an app that helps track graves in a local graveyard, it is not a complex application necessarily. It is a simple couple queries to a database. It allows you to read data and it allows you to update data. It does two things. Super simple interface. In the job interview that I had recently, they freaking loved that app. They thought it was just the funniest thing. Like, wow, that is such a unique application idea. Tell me more about it. I was able, because it was so unique, and I built it on zero budget. It was hosted for free. And they were just like, wow, how did you do that? What did you use? How did you structure it so it could be free? All these things. They thought it was just really super cool. So make it unique and relevant to you. Okay, I'm sorry I'm way behind on chat. I promise I'm catching up. Brian, welcome to the stream. They say that's basically why the Java ORM framework JPA has its query language JPQL almost look like SQL. Yeah, man, SQL's the OG. SQL's the best. I love SQL. Necessity is the mother of invention. Don't let the problem describe the solution. Yeah. Or sorry, let the problem describe the solution. Yeah. Yeah, that's what yeah, I like that phrase. Daddy goes, let the problem describe the solution. What's the right tool for the job? Learn that. Sloop says, what's a good way to solidify my CSS Flexbox? There's some good games out there if you like games. There's one called Flexbox Zombies, that, you have to just get fast at sort of get some muscle memory around Flexbox stuff. And then again, the boring answer is just build stuff with Flexbox. Just find something that you want to build, find a layout that you like, and see if you can build it with Flexbox. And if you can't, Google around until you can. Sagama says, I'm curious, do you have Native American background? I do not. You have Native American lineages? That's cool. Yeah, so my lineage is the classic American story of immigration, and, people coming in and making a life for themselves. So that's my history. Yeah, and Dedigo sums it up very nicely. There's no programming language that is better than the other. There's only what I am doing with it. Yes, I say that all the time, Ded, is that, yeah, it really grinds my gears when people say, oh, a certain language sucks, right? Oh, PHP sucks. No, it may not be the right tool for the job every time, but the language exists because sometimes it is the right tool for the job. And so you have to be agnostic when you're like looking at approaches, right? What should we be using? What is my employer requiring me to use? Then I'm going to use that. Peak says, I know you just started Laravel, but do you have a favorite between JavaScript, Python, and PHP? Well, they all, they can all have different use cases, right? We were just talking about that. Python, I use Python. I don't use Python for web development. I use Python for doing cool stuff with big files and data, right? Because it's really good at that. So that's great. I love Python. It's great. I love JavaScript. JavaScript is great for web development. Laravel can do some cool stuff that, JavaScript can't. It's got some cool stuff that it, just has built into it. So there's always going to be pros and cons depending on what you're trying to build. I don't have a favorite because it's, they all do different stuff. Oh, thank you, Quadshot. That's very sweet of you. Brand new Wayla, welcome to the stream. I love what you said there. They say, in my real world experience, job titles often make no sense, so don't focus on them too much. 100 freaking percent. My job title right now at my work is actually wrong. It does not describe what I do. The department wants to change it, but there's all these hoops I got to jump through with HR. So yeah, my job title right now doesn't describe what I do. And yeah, I've a bunch of people. It's actually hurt our hiring practices because we post this job title and then we get a bunch of people who apply who don't have the right skills because they read the title and it's like that's not what we wanted. We wanted this other thing, but the title is wrong. So yeah, stuff like that. Job titles are useless. The point. What is it they say on Whose Line Is It Anyway? What did they say? It's the game is made up and the points don't matter. Yeah, I think that's what they say. That's how it is in the job world too. The game is made up, the points don't matter. Job titles are useless. Yeah, that's a good point, Ded. They say most people don't like a given language because of the language, but instead they like a given abstraction on that given language. Yeah, so going back to, I would not want to build an API in plain Node.js. If you sat me down and said, build this API in Node, I would say, no, let me install Express. If you let me install Express, I will gladly build you an API. And that's kind of what you're saying here. Most of these abstractions are really just simplification of problems that have already been solved for convenience. Yep. We stand on the shoulders of giants. We should all acknowledge that. And yeah, that's why, it's easier to code in Laravel than plain PHP. It's easier to use Express than Node. It's easier to, do dynamic stuff in React than it is in plain JavaScript. Yeah, just abstractions. Sagama says, have you ever tried machine learning, built models or with a language chain? Nope. Haven't touched machine learning. I might if I find a, use case, but no, not right now. See, I'm not a data scientist. I'm more of a nuts and bolts data engineer. Data scientist is yet another strata in this data world. Data scientists do cool stuff. They're generally the ones building those machine learning models. They're, again, they're more like consumers of data, but they're also creators. They're kind of on a higher level of data manipulation and consumption to, build those AI models and the machine learning models. I'm just the one out there. I'm just piping the data into those guys. I'm just like, here, I'm going to give you the data. You do whatever you want with it. I don't know what you're going to do with it. I'm just going to make sure it looks good. Peak says, I wish I could take my favorite parts of each language and merge them into a new one. There you go. Hey, build a framework. All right. Any other questions, folks? Those are good questions. I like this discussion. It's always good to cover this stuff. I think I find that a lot of folks, when they're first learning to code, it all seems very impenetrable and vast and difficult to get your head around. And then once you actually start doing it, like once you actually start building stuff for yourself, then you start to see patterns. You start to see commonalities. You start to understand the shared structures between languages and frameworks that make learning so much easier. It's the ball rolling downhill, right? It's slow to start. The train is very rocky and the ball starts rolling very slowly, but then it picks up speed, right? As you gather more and more. It's like it's like that game Katamari Damacy, right? Anybody out there played Katamari Damacy? Where you start out as a little ball and it's really hard to pick anything up. You're real slow, starts real small, can't pick up anything, but then you start to pick up small things, right? And then you grow larger, and finally at the end you're just rolling across the whole map, just picking up everything in sight. That's kind of what learning to code is like. As you pick up more knowledge, you get to pick up more knowledge. Yeah, Peak, that sounds like a cool project. Yeah. Ooh, that's a new vocab word for me, Dead Egos. De-individuation bias. That's a $50 word right there. Google that guy. Mm. Perceived loss of individuality and personal responsibility that can occur when someone participates as part of a group. Okay, I'm curious, Dad. How are you applying that to being a developer? I'm genuinely asking. I'm not quite seeing the connection between this and being a dev, but I'm curious about what your thoughts are here. Okay, I see what you mean. The issue comes up with when people stop thinking about the problem and only focus on the tool a given group is focused on. Yeah, when you start to say like, oh, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, kind of. Oh, we have this tool, we got to use it for everything, when it might not be the best fit for what you're actually trying to do. And sometimes that problem is unavoidable in corporate situations. Sometimes truly all you have is a single tool, regardless of whether it's the right fit for the problem, right? Sometimes it's a requirement that you must use a particular tool. We kind of have that situation right now at my work where we have a particular tool that we use for all of our data pipelines. Even if something like a Python script would be a lot faster, nope, we have to use the tool. That is what we use. That is the standard. But if you have some more flexibility, then yeah, you have to be careful about having that bias towards oh well, we all know this tool, we should use it for everything. Well, no, maybe we should try to upgrade or switch or do something that works better for this job. Yeah. What is the actual problem we are trying to solve, and what is the best tool to solve that problem? Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions, folks? Again, there's no such thing as a silly question or a stupid question. Those aren't real. Those don't exist. So if you have something you're like, I'm afraid I'm going to sound silly if I ask, not true. Okay, I'll give folks a few minutes to think of any last questions. I'm going to start kind of pulling up the raid screen here in the background, but we've still got plenty of time. So no rush at all. It just always takes me a minute to get to the raid screen because Twitch is silly. Of course, Peak. It's good to have you here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Pull up the raid here. As always, yeah, it's great to have you here, Dylan. As always, we also like to, yeah, of course, Rex, 100%. That says respect for giving to your community this stream. Yeah, that's what I do, man. This is reciprocal. Um, I've been streaming for a few years now, and it's always fun to get on here and interact with folks and answer questions. And that's how I keep learning. That's how I keep going forward. Is by if I was just trying to do this myself. Like for example, I had wanted to learn Python for like a year, and I just didn't do it. I was like, I want to learn Python, but there was always something else that came up, or something else I'd rather do, or there's video games to play, right? There's video games to play, there's books to read, there's movies to watch. But then when I committed to say I'm going to learn Python live on stream and I'm going to teach it. Yeah, that's the second part of that, Dead. Is yeah, I'm going to learn Python live on stream and teach it at the same time. That's when it worked. That's when I learned Python. Is because it's about the community aspect. It's about again, it's reciprocal. I get on here, I teach, but then I also, get energy and questions and new topics from folks in chat. And that's the only way I was able to learn Python is by just doing it live on stream over a period of a couple months. And truly, yes, the best way is to learn something is to teach, because you're applying the concepts of learning. You're applying repetition and application each time you teach something. And you don't have to be an expert in something to teach it either. I say this from experience, from consistently learning simultaneously while teaching. Um, you have to have a level of true understanding of something to teach it. And so it's best to learn and teach at the same time if you can, because you won't feel confident speaking about something unless you understand it. And that's how we learn. So, yeah, teaching covers the topics of repetition and application. And that's why I highly recommend it to anybody trying to learn something new. Go on stream, even if you're just streaming to one other person or nobody or your dog. Doesn't matter. Try to teach it. Can you teach it? Can you summarize it? Can you phrase something in your own words? If you can, then you probably understand it. If you can't, then you don't. Yeah, self-aware, and streaming by definition, you know, by its very nature, will increase your self-awareness, right? You're watching yourself on a screen. If I start to, feel less comfortable about a topic, I'll notice that my body language changes, or I start to stutter and stumble in my words. Then, okay, wait, I need to go back and review this topic again. And the internal self awareness of being prepared to talk about something in front of a crowd. Am I prepared to talk about it? Am I feeling okay today? Do I need to take a break? Do I need to review something more before I talk about it? All those things. You start to become more aware of yourself and how you're doing. Peak says, "Oh my OMG." Well, it is. So you go through a sort of ego death. Yeah, definitely. I could never. Peak says, "I could never subject myself to the internet by streaming. Ego way too fragile." Honestly, yeah, I started out that way too. I was really, when I first started streaming, for probably the first like 6 months, I was really afraid of being wrong. Right? I was really like, I would get really nervous before each stream. Be like, I would absolutely have every single duck in a row. Like, I would have rehearsed my stuff a bunch of times, prepared everything ahead of time, rehearsed until I had it down. I'd gone through every error, I had accounted for every possibility, and it would take hours of prep, which is not a bad thing, right? Prepping is good. I'd still do it, but it was such a huge, anxiety producer of being afraid of being wrong. And what I've found since is that you can't prepare for every possibility. Somebody's always going to have a question you don't know the answer to. Somebody's always going to point out, oh, hey, your code is wrong there. Like, that's wrong. You didn't catch that, and then you have to fix it live on stream. Or something's, not going to work the way you expect. It worked on your laptop. It doesn't work on your desktop. What's going on? Or, a service might be down. You just can't prepare for everything. It's not possible. And I've since learned that when you do get something wrong, then that provides a learning opportunity for not only for you, but for your chat, for your viewers. You learn how to troubleshoot better. You learn how to Google the right thing. You learn where the docs are. You learn how to talk through a problem like you would in real life, right? You're speaking about it. You're asking questions. You're going back and forth with chat. And that's a much better tool than, that pre-prepped example, right? And so how do you handle that mistake? So I've learned to kind of, I still like, I still don't like it when I get things wrong because it interferes with the lesson, right? If I have to spend time troubleshooting, that's less time giving content. But the content produced by troubleshooting is sometimes really good. So I still try to avoid mistakes, but I don't do the same level of obsessive prep that I used to for these streams. I will still go over the material. I will still make sure that I can speak confidently to it and articulate it well. But if something happens, we'll spend some time troubleshooting. It's fine. I don't have the same level of nervousness prior to a stream that I used to. I can go on stream probably without a rise in my heart rate now. It's just like, all right, I'm going to jump on stream. We're going to talk about this stuff. I think I'm ready. Let's go. It's not the cold, clammy sweat and, and level of anxiety that I used to have. So peak, I would suggest that everybody should try streaming at some point. It's definitely a way to reduce nervousness, just in general, reduce anxiety, reduce uncertainty as you do it more and you realize, hey, I'm gonna be fine. If I make a mistake in front of people, it's okay. A meteorite's not gonna come and crush my house. It's okay. We'll roll through it. We'll be fine. Nobody's gonna be the worse for wear. And the best part is that if you truly do, make a huge blunder, you can just end the stream, right? You just click the end stream button and you're offline. It's great. Not that I've ever done that, but it's an option. Yeah, there's always you can't do that in real life, right? I mean, you could walk out of a job interview, right? But streaming has the unique privilege of being able to hit that button. Yeah, you could lie and say your internet went out. Exactly. Be like, oops, sorry, I had to end the stream. Bye. Hope you all had a good time. Right? Yeah. So you have a unique opportunity there. Highly recommend. But yeah, that's why streaming is a really great option for everyone. I would say I always encourage people to go into streaming. I would say, oh, thank you, Thirsty. It's great to have you here. I would always say never go into streaming with the expectation that you will have an audience. You should never expect, you should always be grateful when people join your chat or want to spend time watching you, but you should never have the expectation that it's going to happen, because then you'll just be disappointed, rather than being pleasantly surprised when people do join you. And speaking of people joining you, as always, we like to try to find folks to raid who are similar or smaller size and the same category. Like to support folks who are up and coming and see what they are up to. So like to take, and as always, if anybody has any suggestions on who we'd like to raid, please do let me know. Oh, they're making their first website. Any advice is welcome. Let's see what this person's doing. Dope. Oh, they look like they're building a cool website. Let's see. They are doing, what are they doing? Okay, this looks fun. They're doing some web dev. Maybe, we could all jump in there and give them some positive encouragement. Yeah, this does look like a fun raid. Okay. Right? Peak. I know. I was like, dang, this goes hard. This is some good styling they've got going on here. 100%. All right. Yeah. Let's go ahead and raid this person, especially since a lot of us are web devs. But yeah, as always, when we raid, whoever we raid, please give them positive vibes. Please show them the same respect that you would show me. And, give them a positive view of this community that we have here, because this is a good community. All right. Cool. Okay, we're going to start the raid now. Can't wait to give them some kudos for the amazing work they've done so far. All right, I will see you all next weekend. We're going to learn about databases in Laravel next weekend. That's my jam, so please show up. It's going to be a good one. All right, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.